We're going to give our guest an hour. And we're live. Here we go. Well, good morning, everybody. Isn't that
good evening?
Good evening, wherever you are.
Good night.
Good evening. Good morning in Australia. It's quite unusual for the three of us to be in front of the computer screens at this time of the day in Australia. We have a tendency, obviously, to be doing our nightly pubcasts or weekly podcasts. We've got a couple of guys already on board listening. Welcome, fellas. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat ourselves with you guys for probably the next hour or so, and then we have a very special guest coming on board. You may have read it. This is probably why you guys are on. But we have Bob Kramer, world-renowned mastersmith and chef knife maker coming on, all the way from Washington State over in the US of A.
So just for the benefit of those that have joined us straight up, he'll be joining us at 11 o'clock our time. We are going to have a quick chat for an hour or so before he comes on. Just want to make that clear. And
we want to make that clear, don't we, Mert?
Okay. Let me just eat shit and let's get over with it. Okay, guys. So a couple of weeks ago, we supposed to have this podcast. It didn't happen, and you wondering why did it happen. So yes, I made a mistake calculating the time difference. And when Bob sent me a message, "Hey, I'm ready for the recording. Send me the link." I realized he wasn't. Put that phone down. I fucking can't see it. Put it down. I looked at the message saying from Bob, "Yeah, I'm ready for the interview." I'm looking at the time. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. So I fucked up the time difference. And panicking, I'm calling Corin. Corin is like, "I'm about to go to a big international sales meeting. I can't do it now, man." Kev is outside. He's buying welding supplies because he booked up a welding class or something. He's like, "Nah, man, I can't do it." So I had to tell Bob 2 weeks ago, "Hey, Bob, I'm fucking useless. I cannot calculate the time difference. So there's no interview now. I'm sorry." And he has now replied. Okay, for those who doesn't have a screen, now Corin is showing the local time in Washington. Yes, Corin, I just said it again. Apparently they had a fucking time change. I forgot the time change doesn't always apply. Sometimes the difference is 15 hours, sometimes 13. Yeah, I missed that. Thanks for pointing it out.
I can. It's on the screen just in case you were.
If you also on that screen, Mert, when you go across three across, and it says DST ended. Is that daylight saving time ended?
I can't see the screen. I'm on my phone.
Never mind. But to the benefit of one of our listeners in particular, Ian Anderson. G'day, Ian. How are you? He's from Colorado, so we're at the perfect time for our listener from Colorado. How good's that?
Fucking awesome. Well, it's about time.
Next shirt, Matt. I'm fucking useless. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the support, buddy.
Yeah, you're getting the level of support you deserve, and you're getting the level of support we expect from our listeners. Well, the thing is, though, we still have Bob Kramer lined up to come on board for
Yay!
We got to call this a podcast this morning because I just finished my second double shot coffee, and Corin's drinking a cup of tea, and Mert's probably on the water. It's a little bit strange that here's the beer from last time. Yeah, so we have with us our usual array of presenters. We have Corin from Gamico, Mert from Tansy Knives, and myself, Kev from Kev's Forge. Mert, what have you been up to it's been a little while. What have you been up to, mate?
It's been a couple of weeks since we talked last time. What have I done? I worked on the yard. I've done knives. I broke things, and I realized I'm useless in fixing things at home.
Wow. How do we take a positive out of that, mate?
Okay, the positive part was the Yeah, well, Corin came over for dinner with his lovely wife. I cooked for them, but other than that, yeah, it wasn't much productive, man. I had an integral Damascus knife that I had. It was in the works. I managed to finish it. That was the highlight of the last 2 weeks. What else? I finished another knife, but man, my daughter's closet was broken, and that lid was there for 2 years. And I said, that's enough. I'm going to fucking fix it. I filled up the broken parts with the epoxy, and I went to Bunnings and lined up the hinges so I buy the right shit. And so when I filled up the epoxy, apparently I didn't fill up right, so the fucking hinges don't fit. And the hinges that I bought, they got different size fucking screw shit compared to the IKEA one, so they don't fix. So I had to fill up the holes with the more epoxy, and then I put the door. The motherfucking IKEA stuff was like a 1 centimeter shorter, so the lid doesn't close.
Oh dear.
But you had to go, Mert.
You can
And-
close it. Yeah, you can close it if you close one lid, then the next one. My daughter is perfectly fine with it, but you knowing like you're fucking useless. You couldn't fix a simple door hinged. So anyway,
Just run a circular saw straight up between the two doors, mate. Should be apples.
Yeah.
other than that, not much. What have you guys been up to?
Big deep breath.
Car.
Yeah. Look, I actually went up to the Hunter Valley last week, and I went and visited some family up there, and I had a conference. Oh, pardon me. And gotta get that out before Bob starts. And I went and had dinner and saw Chateau de Mert in the Hunter Valley. It was something quite special. Fantastic meal, great family, and to see Mert's workshop, brilliant. And what a steak! It was the biggest steak I've had outside of America. So,
Did you say my workshop was brilliant, or seeing my
Yeah.
workshop was brilliant?
well, I didn't want to be rude. I'll leave that up to interpretation from our listeners. Well, it's good.
We should run a poll: seeing it or being it.
Problem with your workshop is it's like all dirty and looks like you use it.
I cleaned it before you got here, you asshole.
Yeah. So, there we go. And that was
You got to meet my puppy. You got to meet my dogs.
I got your puppy. Your puppy's obscene. I never knew what a Kenga was. Like a how do you say it? Your
Kangal.
dog? Kangal.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. They are a big dog. I thought like a Great Dane was big, but no. And it's always reassuring when you go to someone else's house and you have to be introduced to the dog outside, which is barking at you, stands 6 foot high at the shoulders. Because if you come onto his territory and you're not introduced outside, shit could get real. So I'm like, yeah, no, that's all right. So he comes out, he's barking in our faces. Huge dog. We walk inside, and he didn't stop barking for about half an hour. But yeah, I mean, I'd shat myself fully by then, so there was no more mess going to be made. You look, honestly, anybody thinking of jumping Mert's fence, ride a wheel. Great dog, though. Once you get to know him, he's awesome.
Yeah, he'll play with you.
Oh,
He'll
yeah.
open his mouth and nibble on you.
Yep, and you just let him do it.
And just watching it play with the puppy, it's so gentle. With like the puppy is the size of its head. Pretty cool. And then beautiful dinner. We had Mert running around like a chef, really, cooking 6 different things at once. Like I couldn't have done it. Too many saucepans. But got it done, and it was beautiful. Nice mushroom sauce and broccoli and risotto and shit. Yeah, it was great. And not shit. There was no shit. It was really good. Thanks, Mert. And it's really nice. Really nice.
No worries.
So,
thanks for coming.
Actually, the best meal we had in the Hunter, and in fact, probably the best meal we've had all year. So, yeah, excellent.
Nice.
Yep.
What have you been up to,
Kaya.
Jeff?
Good.
Well, we had a sad occasion well, still is sad. Last week, I posted it on Facebook. I don't know if I've got my Facebook locked down to friends only or not. But we lost one of our dogs. Anyone that's been to my house as a friend or as a person on a course would have known that I have 2 dogs that greet you at the door and hang out, and just they're pretty cool, very relaxed. So we had an old boy, Murph, and poor old Murph just got to that stage where he just stopped working, unfortunately. That was last week. Still getting over the fact that he's not around. We've got our other puppy. Well, he's 12 years old too. But we've got our other dog that, you know, he's missing him. We're all missing him. So it's put that, you know, you have a dog for 14 years that, and especially the last 4 or 5 years that I've been home on my own working, and that's your companion. It's a big loss. It leaves a gaping hole. But the cool thing is when you see someone like yourself that has 2 dogs, you know, that dog owner lover community is pretty strong. Outside of that, back running classes. I had a group of guys back, three mates that weren't as trying, I guess, in terms of what they wanted to achieve this time around. The previous 3 guys were friends as well. So, and I've got a bunch of work on the go that's keeping me busy and keeping my sort of enthusiasm up, which is good. I need to get some knives over to the US. I've just got to now knuckle down and do that. My nephew, Mert, you probably think he's crazy, but my nephew is a 3rd-year apprentice chef over in WA, and might be something on the cards for him coming up soon as well in terms of my knives and knife making and whatnot. So looking out for that. Yeah, so bit of sad stuff happening, but we're going all right with it. You know, these things occur. It just doesn't get easier, unfortunately.
No, mate, losing a dog is losing family. It is what it is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We actually rescued him from the RSPCA when he was only 6 weeks old or something, and the poor old bugger had like issues his entire life. He was skittish, had anxiety because in the 6 weeks before we got him, he was obviously treated really poorly. We revered him almost in a godlike sense as we do with our dogs. They have beds in the house, free access. They're treated well. They're loved well. So, you know, in his hours before he was put to sleep, he got to experience pretty much everything and anything in the fridge that would be remotely pleasing to a dog, including chocolate and chocolate, cheese, steak, bacon, whatever we could give him just to make that last bit of time pass, which makes me feel good because, like I said, you know, if I was going to go out like that, I'd be fucking happy. I'd want to go out with a belly full of bacon and chocolate and cheese. The only thing
it's likely going to happen, but anyway.
I know, but I'm going to be clutching at my heart for those last few seconds as that does happen. The only thing we didn't give him, which I was tempted to, was to crack a can of beer open or something and let him see if he could have get a bit of grog into him. But, you know, I didn't want him to go out in pain. So, yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. I've been. We'll just go back because just saying about Mer was just saying for the last time that we mistakenly had Bob 12 hours around on our time zone. Yeah, I got my gas for my MiG, and I had Jake from 116 Blades come up. He was up from the coast for a couple of days with his wife doing some stuff, and he put a couple of hours out of his day up here and came out just to give me enough information and a bit of a start on how to, you know, troubleshoot welding. Laid down a few beads, weld lines, whatever, that were, you know, reasonably clean considering what they were prior to that. Yeah, and now it's just a case of practice. But ideally for me, it's just going to be, well, I've done a few fixes around the workshop, which is surprising. Some stuff stuck together, some hasn't. I had one thing where I just put two tiny little tacks hoping this thing would hold. Yeah, I should have just whacked on a bit more. Yeah, so no, that was good of Jake to come up. And like you said, I'm now at the dangerous stage. At least I can understand why things aren't working or troubleshoot, if it's too cold, too hot, all the rest of it. And I worked out or was told like the limitations of my welder. It's only a small one. So that's pretty good. And for me, it's mostly going to be just bloody tacking up the ends of Damascus billets. So, Matt, speaking of Damascus billets, that integral knife that you did looked quite nice. And we've got no sound.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I had to.
Actually,
Yeah, sorry, I was had to bail for a second there. So, guys, there's something else going on.
well, I was talking about the boo-boo I did on the knife. I didn't show you guys much, but that knife was actually finished on Friday, Kev.
Yep.
That knife was completely finished. I'm happy with everything. Everything looks good. I'm holding the knife in my hand. I'm thinking like, oh man, maybe the end of the handle should be a bit more curved. The knife is finished. I always show the guy the knife pictures, like, hey man, your knife is finished. But something inside me said, oh, go just round the end of the handle. So as I start grinding the end of the handle to round it, all of a sudden I start seeing something in the giji that doesn't look like a giji figure. Yeah, I revealed the tang hole. So I fucked up the completely finished knife. And just to make things worse, it's integral. It's already etched. Everything is done.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, oh, maybe if I can do it. No. I fucked it up. I taped the blade well. I broke the handle. I showed the guy the picture saying, hey, I fucked up. I'm sorry. Which seems to be happening a lot these days. And to make things worse, so it's already etched. If I was to put a block of handle on it and shape it while the edge is already done, the bolster is going to be ground off slightly. So even if I etch the knife again, the bolster's edge is not going to match the edge of the blade, because blade has been etched 7-8 times along with the bolster, but since the bolster is ground off, it was going to look funky. I end up making a heirloom fit handle. Like I made a handle on its own completely, finished it, checked it fit, making sure like it's 0.5 millimeter oversized, finished it, glued it, and all that, finished it, send the guy a picture saying, hey, look, you got another handle. Oh man, that was the first boo-boo. Another boo-boo was, it was 39 degrees yesterday.
Ooh.
It was 39, 40 degrees in the valley, and the side, the wooden sheet I made, it started opening up because of the heat. So I had to make another one.
Thanks, Mother Nature.
Thanks, Mother
And there's
Nature.
another word you can just put in there for nature. Thanks, Mother Nature.
Thanks, mother.
That sucks, man. Wow. I had a similar thing with a hunter that I did. I've put together about 4 or 5 hunters that have been on the back burner for a little while, and they all turned out really nice. I had the same thing with the piece of gidgee, beautiful piece of gidgee. I did the final sanding, buffed it, and then held it up to have a look. And lo and behold, there's a flaw that it was internal in the timber. There was no hint of it being on the exterior, and it's like a half moon. It's a micro crack, but it's filled with resin, so it's a half moon micro crack, and it's just one of those things where it's like, nah. If maybe if it was on the back end of the knife, I could have lived with it, but it's right on the side near the bolster, right where your thumb goes, and it stands out to me like dog balls. And I guess it's a lesson for some of those that are listening, in terms of, what do you accept when something's not quite right, like burls and all that sort of stuff that have natural flaws. You can probably get away with, filling it with glue and resin and whatever else like that. But this was a stunning piece of ring gidgee with a half moon micro crack, and it just stands out. So that handle is going to go and get stuck in the press and smashed off, and then I'll dig through the gidgee pile and hope for the best that there's no internal flaws in the next piece.
Such
with me at least, because I'm using the bronze guards, I can just whack another block on and then take off, a percentage of a millimeter and redo the guard. But I can imagine the stress of doing that with an integral, especially an integral Damascus blade, would not be fun. Ian Reynolds come on down there saying super glue and sawdust. Yeah, it works for certain timbers, mate, but not on certain stuff. Like, yeah.
If you know it, if you see it, you can unsee it. No.
You go and watch Nick Wheeler's stuff, tutorials on making the best high-end knives, and watch him smash off a handle. Like, if that's what it takes to be the best, we'll do it. If you don't want to be the best, then don't. I mean, by all means, there's certainly a market for cheaper materials, cheaper stuff. But I'm just saying, like, if you want to be the best and you want your name to be recognised as the best, then that's what it takes. If you don't want to do that, no, don't.
Exactly.
I cannot justify sending that out like that. I cannot justify that.
Oh, what are these?
What is this?
Little sneak peek. These are the front and back.
On screen, for those that are listening to this as a podcast, the Knife Art Association and Everleigh Works up in Sydney are joining hands for the weekend of the 4th and 5th, I believe it is. On the 4th, sorry, isn't it, of December. And we're having a hammer in, and it's to raise some money to put in the Knife Art Association's coffer for when we finally get to start doing knife shows again. It's a hands-on event, and it will have people such as Corin and Keith Flutter, and Dimitri's going to be there, I believe. Who else have we got on the lineup? A few other people, a few other names there to guide people through and do demos and hands-on.
Yeah, hands-on.
Yeah, so it's going to be hands-on, and the details for that can be found online under the Knife Art Association, Gamico pages, our Knife Making Down Under page. And was it, Corin? $100 for a day out, and that's all inclusive of everything, food as well. Should be a good day. Unfortunately, I already have a course booked at my workshop, so I'm not able to make it up, which is a real bummer because I'm hanging to get out and catch up and have a bit of fun with people. What a cool experience to have. Just before.
Well, the only way to get the shirts to be there, Kev. So.
Yeah, unless you're the president of the Knife Art Association and you talk to the fucking paid employee and slip him a little pay bonus on the side.
Yeah, Gamico have a deal going. Any not-for-profit hammer-in run in the country, if you want shirts for it, we'll sponsor you shirts and you can sell them for the event and make money for your not-for-profit association, or you can give them to your members or do whatever. And I believe the KA, as this is a fundraiser, I think we'll be selling the shirts. And yeah, it'll be a good thing.
It's all a pretty cool shirt.
As Kev said, it's just we're paying an employee at the moment, and obviously without the income from shows, it's a tough time. So we just need to raise a bit of capital, and this is what we're doing. So jump in. Yeah.
Plus it's going to be fun for the money, for $100 to go there and know that you're going to have an awesome day, get your hands dirty, have a feed, and just catch up with everyone else. That was it limited to 50 places?
Yeah, that's half sold out already.
And it's more than half sold out. So it's limited to 50 places. There's like another 3 weeks to go, and yeah, like if you're interested, if you're in the area and you can travel there, get out and just engage with people. It's been so long since we've been able to do that. Yeah, that's what I'd be going for. I'd just be going because it's just good fun. Right.
Absolutely.
And the t-shirts look cool.
They do. Mate, got a question here from Stephen Eads. He's asking, bronze guards, Kev, are you buying bronze flat bar or finding scrap?
I buy bronze flat bar when I can get bronze flat bar. I don't like using scraps of brass, bronze, or copper because you can't tell what grade of material it is and therefore if you start to mill it or drill it, you're likely to run into trouble. So I found a supplier a long while ago, and I bought up a big bunch of bar stock, and that supplier no longer has anything. So it's unfortunate that what I've got is what I've got.
Is that flat bar, Kev?
It's flat bar, yeah.
Yeah, so if I can chime in there, we've been searching for a supplier of bronze flat bar for a very long time. Very hard to find anything over 8 thick, and in fact impossible because I haven't been able to buy it. And not only that, it's about matching your grades. So the bronze spacer material and the bronze bar stock has to be the same grade, right? Or at least the same color. And so there's different types of it. You've got PB1, PB2, LG, and LG grade. And actually, the best match you're going to find, and Mert might have put me onto this actually at Perth Knife Show, the best match you're going to find for the standard bronze spacer material is a product called leaded gunmetal, and it's sold as bronze round bar, LG2 or LG1, I think it is. But it's excellent. It's the same color. It's a type of bronze. And it works really well, machines well, and it's good.
Yeah, so if you come across any, like as in a supplier, if you ever find any, let Corin know so we can get it in.
Yeah. I'll just buy it.
Brass and bronze, very similar. The reason I went to bronze was, I guess, influence from some of the American guys that I talk with and have been around, and they don't like brass so much because of the way it patinas. Bronze patinas are slightly cleaner or slightly nicer, ages better. Brass can just patina quite a funky yellow at times, but even then, there's some, if you keep it clean, brass is still nice. Brass, you get the opportunity when you have the machine grade brass, like Corin was just saying, much thicker stock. Like I've got a bar of the brass at home that's like 19 wide and 13 thick, which is absolutely perfect for my small hunters. Yeah, the thicker thing, but I think my bronze is like 5/8 or something. It's 8 or 9 mil thick, which is right on the cusp of, like, I can work it so it looks good, but it's right on the cusp. I'd rather it if it was a little bit thicker, but I'm just working with what I've got.
We do bronze in round bar, and you can. There's numerous ways you can work round bar to get make guards out of it. It's not as easy as it would be as if it was flat bar, but we do a couple of sizes there in bronze round bar. So yeah, it's certainly it's not hard to get round bar, but yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, Steve. If I had a way of getting it or a vendor in line, I'd be definitely telling you about it, but I unfortunately don't. I look at my dwindling stock and I'm like, shit, what do I do when that goes? And I'll probably go to the round bar and just work that a little bit.
Well, the time will come when we cast it. I think we should just bite the bullet, work out what alloy we want, and do a casting run where we get a centrifuge. Because the problem with bronze is you don't just cast the bar; you centrifugally cast the bar. So it's done in a machine that spins it to get the porosity out of it. Very hard to cast bronze without porosity for the application we have. So we can do it, but it's just so fucking expensive. And if you do small runs, if you do a big run, it's not so bad. But the minute you go into small run stuff, it's not worth it.
And I like that bronze because I guess when you look at the style of knives I make the old school style of knives. Hidden tang, brass or bronze guard, and then a wooden handle. I don't do a lot of stainless. I've got some really nice wrought iron that I'll be putting onto a couple of guards on the next few knives too, which should be pretty good. But that's a bit of a pig to machine. It's just
hidden tang is probably the best sort of construction to use rounds. So to use round bar to make the
absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, when you do that, you don't have to worry about bloody matching pin stock inside of it as well. Yeah, it's not the length, it's the girth.
See,
for
Kev,
Lee's
are you gonna use the wrought iron with what kind of blade material?
a low layer Damascus,
Okay.
so
So
carbon
with
steel low layer.
the wrought iron, I recommend you getting the part to the final size and etch it or heat blue it and etch it before you put it on. If you just put it like untreated, it just doesn't, it rust patinas like ugly way. So
Yeah,
I recommend you etch it before you install it on the guard.
yeah. I'll be taking that advice on board. It's really nice. I got it off Carlos de Silva, just a couple of pieces. It's really thick, and man, the grain in it, the grain structure in this rod is amazing. You'd be loving it, but you're not getting it.
It's safe to say I got myself some few bars of wrought iron lately. So I should be good for now. Thank you, though.
Yeah. The other stuff I got a while ago, actually just before, it might have even been last year, was some stuff off Big John from New Zealand,
Yes.
John Worthington, and it was over in the New Zealand. They were using it as fence posts, and
Right.
and that's
Yeah, I heard about that.
oh yeah, that stuff is nice too. But I've actually made a couple. Haven't made knives from them yet, but I've actually done a couple of forge welded billets with the wrought iron and the 52-100, and I'm working out. I'll probably just do, based on some advice I got off Mert, I'll probably just do like a virtually stock remove hunter out of it to see how it goes first.
Yeah.
And then once I'm confident that my heating, forging heats and all that sort of stuff with the wrought sand mile, I'll start smashing some other stuff out.
Yeah, the issue with the wrought, the 52-100 is 52-100 doesn't like to be overheated, and wrought, you really need to work hot.
Yes.
So the ends start crumbling if you're on the low temperatures. But heat treat works out fine.
Yep. Yeah, nice. So, what else? What else has been on the cards? We've got about 25 minutes or so before we get Bob Kramer on board. Probably good time to.
John, I can just check this time in Washington State if you like.
Probably not a bad idea, just so we don't get it wrong.
Okay.
Probably a good time. Probably a good time for our listeners to have a think about any questions they'd like to ask Bob. Obviously, us presenters, I've got a list of questions here, and we'll probably run through some of our usual questions that we ask people about how they get into knife making and stuff. But if you have anything that you would particularly like to ask of Bob Kramer, have a think about it. Don't put it up now because it's going to get lost in the comments on the side of our screens here. But yeah, have a think about that, and we'll run through some of the listeners' questions and post them up for Bob to have a think about.
So, guys, speaking of my last week, I kind of undersold it. I forgot that I had my birthday last week, and my wife did a surprise, and she took me out for a surprise event that I had no idea. Her and a friend of ours, they took me to a little glassworking session in Sydney.
Ooh.
And yes, the guy's name is Mark. He also knows your core, and he told me to tell you hi. I got his all Instagram details. And this was someplace near Everleigh.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah, he does
so,
beautiful borosilicate glass work.
Exactly, and it was a surprise. I got there and surprise because I want to do glass work for a long time, and I'm thinking like, as knife makers, we have a lot of the stuff that to be able to work with the glass, but not knowing the intricacies and small details. It was good to see how you can manipulate like rods of glass into tiny beads and things, and how you can actually stick glass to the other one and pull it and stretch it. It was really cool. We made some objects. I ended up making a small seahorse and little Christmas tree ornament.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, take a step backwards from that. Happy frickin' birthday, mate.
Thanks, buddy.
So show us what you made. Put it up. Can you put up what you made?
Yeah.
Have you got
You
it
better
on
have it with
Instagram?
you.
I don't have it on Instagram yet. I have them. If you give me a second, I can send you the pictures. though.
If it's the guy I'm thinking of, he does stop motion films in glass instead of Play-Doh.
Shit.
So he's,
Shit.
is that the guy? It is the guy. Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to remember his bloody name. Sorry, it's sorry,
His
dude.
name was Mark.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying. What's his Instagram?
Hang on. Where is it? Where is it?
That's pretty cool. We've got the glassworks down here in Canberra as well, which used to be the part of the old power station here in the artsy fartsy part of town.
Mark Elliott Glass.
Elliot. Yep, that's it. Good. Yeah, Mark
Mark
Elliot.
Elliott Glass. Yeah. With 1 L, 2 T's. And I'll show you the pictures if I can. One second. I'll save the pictures and send it to you.
Yeah. So Mark Elliott did a piece, and I don't know if it's available on YouTube. I'm just looking for it now, which was like a whole story, undersea story in stop motion glass, where he just heats up each piece and moves it for every frame. It was done probably near on 10 years ago, and it's epic. Little mermaids and submarines and things. So molten magic in storytelling. Flamework speaks about. Yeah.
I'll send over. I don't know how to. I'll send over WhatsApp. I don't know how to send it over the. Over the thing.
That's cool. So from the look of it, and the Julianne's just said happy birthday, Mert. All the best people had birthdays last week. I would be assuming from a comment like that perhaps Julianne had a birthday last week too, because I didn't. So if that's the case, happy birthday, Julianne. Being a gentleman, we're not going to ask how old you are. We can hit that up with Mert. How many turns around the sun for you, Mert?
39.
39. Nice.
Yeah. So guys, I have to let my puppy in.
Yeah, this is Carnage Creations, and he talks about want to learn glassworking, have some sculptural ideas to combine forged steel, and glass pieces. So I actually have one here, which is it's just a simple glass marble. I bought this at a charity auction down in South Australia. It's made by John from Northern Springworks.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, never mind. Yeah.
Does like a fire poker with a large marble in the end of it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I want to give a shout out while we're talking about glass and glassworks and stuff. I want to give a shout out to another maker that you really need to go and have a look at if you're interested in glassworks, and it is Annette Blair Glass. So ANNETTEBLAIR Glass, all one word. Annette Blair Glass. If you want to, on Instagram, if you want to be blown away by what glass can be shaped into, you need to go and check Annette's gear. And then if you scroll down, go and have a look at her Instagram. You scroll down, she's created a set of stuff that was, it's hammers, it's paint tins, it's paint brushes. Everything on them is made out of glass, and it blows you away what these other artists out there doing this really cool stuff is. Yeah, we get kind of caught up sometimes, I think, just in that knife making world, and we see, knives, maybe some hammers and maybe some tongs and some other stuff. And then you sometimes forget about that other course of artisan that's out there, and the glasswork is just unbelievable when you see someone that knows what they're doing. And like I say, in Canberra, we've got the glassworks out the old power station here, and I'm going to do similar to Mert. I'm going to go out and actually, there's a course we can do here that's go out and you make your own whiskey glass, which I think will be appropriate for our podcast. So I'm going to sign up to that. I was going to be doing it earlier this year, obviously, then COVID shut everything down. So let's just hoping the best now that things stay open and we can get out and do some bits and pieces. But yeah, it's amazing when we see.
I've got a question here from Lee Cantwell, and he's saying, I want some white handle pins. Can we get G10 rods or micarta rods in white? Dude, just give Cole contact Cole. You'll be surprised what he has in samples and offcuts and product samples and things. So he'll probably be able to help you out. We've tried to get we've obviously got micarta rods. And I don't know if we have it in white. So definitely, if it's not on our website, just talk to Cole, because he's got stacks of samples and stuff there, and stuff we might be buying if there's enough demand. And yeah, just have a chat to him. So put his gold. Hey, look at that. Brazilian bloodwood.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I want to make a box.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The things you find on my desk. Anyway.
Yeah. When I've come to visit and popped up to your office, it's funny sometimes the stuff that's sitting on there, you can get lost. Like you said, all the stuff that passes your desk.
Yeah. I had 2 hot cuts here this morning. We're going to go back into hot cuts. We just ordered 100. So. Nice. Anyway, there we go.
Very good.
And what else is news? What's the time? 10:42, 15 minutes. Cool.
Yeah, almost there.
Yeah. So main thing is come to the hammering if you're in Sydney. Knife Art Association.
Yeah, for sure.
You find it by Googling Knife Art Association 2020 hammering. It's a great way to finish. There's always we run the risk that we'll all go into lockdown, but we got through with the symposium. We hope to get through with this one. The venue is good for about 300 people if you're worried about social distancing. Being the biggest blacksmith shop you're probably ever going to see ever in your life. And I will be doing a hands-on piece on how to make ferrules. So how to form material and make ferrules for barrel knives, basically. Yeah.
Which you could probably transform that knowledge into other knives that aren't barrel knives.
Yeah, look, anytime you want to make a fitting for a sheath, for example, so you want to make a silver end cap or something like that.
And
I'll talk about soldering.
I've been up at your place and we've done partial parts of barrel knives so far, but I've seen you do that process, and I've got to admit, for someone that is like a completely zero hands-on in terms of soldering that style of fitting, it's freaking amazing to watch. Like, it's unreal. And you are definitely bloody good at what you do, because the one that you did, that's it. They can look good, and they can also look pretty shit. But the one what you did, we polished it up. I couldn't tell where the join line was.
Yeah, and that's obviously the end game.
Yeah.
So one funny thing with the corn and barrel knives is, I think he must have like some kind of notification set on internet. Anytime there's a conversation about barrel knives on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, Corin gets notification and he's right there. It's like a Michael Bublé on a Christmas songs. The second it gets December, Christmas, Michael Bublé jumps in. Same thing applies with Corin and the barrel knives.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't go on Instagram that much anymore, but I'm trying to get off all the social media and spend less time looking at my device. I'm getting consistent and ongoing headaches, and the social media is just too addictive.
You probably need.
Like, I get a fair amount of stress watching it too, because there's stuff on there that I should be doing this or should fix that, and the stuff I can't change.
Yeah,
and it just.
So you're not gonna make TikTok videos?
I did for a little while.
Okay.
I just get distracted on TikTok by all the pretty girls dancing, and I don't do anything.
No.
TikTok dance challenge accepted, Kev?
No, I don't do TikTok. I think TikTok's a joke. I saw it. So Jamie might be at the Hammering after 4 p.m, which would be nice to see Sausage Man out there. I saw a little flyby video actually of Everly Works that was taken recently, and the works they've done there, like I said, that leveling of the floor, that new floor and stuff, that is superb. I didn't actually recognize it as Everly at first because it's so clean and so well presented, and you know, I'd like to get up there just to see that, because when we were talking to Matty Mewburn about it last time, the scale of the work involved in getting that material moved and that floor down, it just, you know, blows the mind, you know, like how much went into that. And it really is now like that refreshes the new old, you know. We've got the clean level floors and then all of that same equipment in there, and it just looks unreal.
It's mad. It looks absolutely epic. And he's got like just, you know, heaps of grinders, heaps of anvils, heaps of old forges, old school stuff, gas forges. Yeah. We basically got the run of the place. He's generously donated the venue for this event, and it's simply to help us raise money.
Yeah.
And he's well, we just got to cover our costs. So I just can't thank Matt enough for what he's doing. If anybody's interested in a course in blacksmithing and knife making, that's a big shout out to Everly Works for that. It's just such a great venue, epic.
Yeah.
And
Sausage Man was just saying it's so bright in there, which is, I think, the first part of why I didn't recognise it was Everly to begin with. Was it the change that's happened in there is unreal. Like, yeah, I can't wait. Get up there.
It's going to be grand. It's going to be grand. I'll be teaching. Yeah, like I say, I'll take up some copper or something like that, or some bronze or nickel silver, and people can have a go at making a ferrule or show them how to go through the whole process. And if they're interested, I don't really care, because I've got my picture of the shirt now. So
you suck. Yeah. So every time someone sees a person wearing the Hammer-In shirt with Curran's barrel knife on it, we'll have to make a new drinking game. Every time you see that shirt, you'll have to go and have a drink of something.
Yeah, that's it. I had to. Oh, somebody had to pause our podcast to listen to us live. Look at
that. Wow, that's a little bit surreal, actually.
It's about to get good. It's about to get good. We
got about another 10 minutes until we have arguably the best chef knife maker in the world come on, Bob Kramer. God, excited about that. Yeah, I've been watching a few YouTubes this morning when I first got up. I'll tell you there's for those who weren't listening, had a loss in our family, which was my old dog Murph, and one of the sad reminders of that is our other dog Joey, or Jojo, is kind of lost without him, because Murph was his thing. So we get the wake up call now of the crying dog at the door at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, don't want to tell him to piss off because it's pretty fresh still. But so I was awake quite early this morning, jumped on YouTube and just watching the Bob Kramer videos, and it was good. He's got a fucking awesome workshop.
I haven't even looked on account of I've been busy. Yeah, Mert.
Can you pull out the last knife that he did with the feather, but instead of like a being feather Damascus, there's actually, hang on, my horses.
Is it on Instagram?
Yes,
it's on his Instagram.
It's actually like a canister Damascus. Somehow he's done this feather within another layer of Damascus. It looks it's a realistic looking feather. It looks unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
also
next level.
he makes his own steel as well. Like, he also makes his crucible wood steel. Sorry, guys.
I wouldn't talk that way to your dog, Mert, honestly.
No, give your dog some respect, man. It'll rip your arm off.
He will.
All right. I have to just quickly disappear for 2 seconds, and then I will be back myself.
There we go. Usually do. I've lost Kevu's on. Happy
Yeah.
days. That one?
Yep.
Epic.
If all of the stuff that he's doing is like crazy, inspirational stuff.
And he's here. Oh, look at that.
There
Hey,
he
guys.
is. Hey, Bob.
How are ya?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, all in all.
Good.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Just let
Yeah,
me
you're
just
welcome.
fiddle
Thanks.
things around on the screen.
Yeah.
That's Mert's dog. He's saying hello. That's quite a regular occurrence on this show. Nobody's
My
game
dog is
enough to
talking.
tell him to shut up. Have you seen his dog? His dog stands about here. It's huge.
Uh-huh.
Big
We'll get it.
It's a Turkish Kegel. I'll find a picture of one. Kegel, I think he says.
Yeah, he's a Kangal. He's Turkish lifestyle
Kangal.
guardian dog, and he's about 28 to 30, 28, 29 centimeters on the shoulder. And when he stands up, he's probably more taller than 6 foot, 6'5" or something. It's a big dog.
Wow, cool.
Let me
Has
let me
a big
share it.
bark.
Yeah. Never heard of it. Never heard of it. How do you spell I'm gonna write it down.
Here you go. It's on the screen.
Kangal. It's a. You might have heard Anatolian Shepherd, but Anatolian Shepherd is like doesn't refer anything. It's like saying red wine. It doesn't specify any region. Kangal is the name of the dog, name of the breed. Yeah, that's a Kangal right there.
Wow.
Yes.
He's a beast. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's nice unless you're eating a steak and it's looking over your shoulder, and then it's just a little bit scary.
That's awesome.
That was my weekend in a nutshell. But anyway, let me get that off the screen. Here we go. Well, very pleased to meet you, Bob. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the invite.
I'm not too sure if you're aware who we are, but we certainly are aware of who you are. And Mert, you know Mert, yeah?
Yeah.
And Kev?
Yeah,
Have you
g'day.
met-
I'm back.
Hey, Kev.
How
Yeah.
are you?
Good. I'm doing well. Thank you.
And yeah, I'm Corin. So there you go.
And
Um,
you're all bladesmiths, right?
Well, that's a good question. I am. Kev is certainly a bladesmith, and Mert is certainly a bladesmith, and I'm known for being the most published knife maker in Australia who makes the fewest amount of knives.
Good job. You're good at Photoshop.
Well, actually, no, I have a secret, and his name's Sharp by Coop. Yeah, so I get mine done by Jim Cooper, but yeah, I make barrel knives, which you may or may not be familiar with.
No.
You know what a barrel knife is?
No.
Yeah. So
We'll educate you by the time this ends. You'll know what a barrel knife
a
is.
common discussion I have, but yeah, I was in. If you look at, did you get Blade magazine? No. July edition, last page. No,
No.
never mind. But never mind. Yeah. So they're a type of folding knives. Kev, help me out here. Save me. Do you want me to put a picture up?
Here, no, hang on. One moment. This is a barrel knife.
Okay.
So the barrel knife, this one's not as nice as Corin's, but you pull out the internal and then pop open your blade, and then that all slides back together with a nice little click. And then you have this. So Corin could probably give you a quick rundown on the origins of them, but they're Swedish sort of style of knife. Yeah, there's one of Corin's. Corin's is absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, stunning stuff. Like,
anyway, I'll send you some pictures later. It's something that probably people are probably sick of me talking about on the podcast. It's pretty much all I do. So, anyway,
so Bob, we had this thing going when we have what we refer to as a pubcast of a Thursday evening, our time. We had a little drinking game going that whenever we mentioned certain things, one of them being a barrel knife, the guests that were drinking along with us had to have a little bit of a drink. And we had to stop talking about barrel knives because everyone was getting drunk and passing out on the pubcast.
Sounds good. That's a good game. Is that the only thing you drink to is barrel knife?
Oh,
no.
If I say Samurai, they take a shot.
When I say Blade Show, they take a shot.
The problem was we played along with them for about 3 weeks, and we call them the pubcasts. And they start really well, but geez, they end messy.
I still have to drive home after this too.
Yeah,
really? Okay.
Oh, you're safe. Yeah.
We would.
It's 10 o'clock, so yeah.
We would wake up on the Friday morning very, very fuzzy, and wonder what truck ran over us the night before. It was. So we had to scale. We had to scale it back just a little bit.
What are you guys drinking?
Coffee this morning. It's only.
Whiskey normally, but if we didn't have you here, it'd be whiskey. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So I'm the only one drinking tonight.
Yes. Well, we have a few. We have a few listeners tuned in from the US at the moment as well. So they might be at that time of the day where they're having a after work drink as well.
Okay. Sounds good.
So you're in the office today. Still in the office in Washington State. That's where you live. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a couple minutes before 4 p.m.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that well because we're hopeless.
Okay. I'll take the blame. But I stuffed it up. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, I stuffed it up, and also I didn't take into account. You guys had the time change.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's not a problem.
It's okay for you. We've been here for an hour.
We were just getting warmed up, right?
Yeah. It's how we get our listeners on board. We tell them that we've got like arguably the world's best chef knife maker coming on the show, and they all tune in, and then we tell them, okay, now you have to listen to us for an hour.
Well, do you think you're going to get more people this week because you postponed it a week, or are you going to get less people because they're like, fuck these guys, they don't have it.
Most of them say that each week regardless.
Yeah, we get we get some pretty decent numbers, but typically they watch during we get about anywhere up to about 150 during a live stream, but that we do them at night, late in the evening when people can watch. So everyone's at work today, so we'll probably be lucky to hit 40. But tonight and over coming weeks, they'll all watch it and they'll listen to it when we put it up as a podcast as well. And we get some pretty decent numbers, I think, for a podcast anyway. So yeah, I'm not unhappy with it.
So what inspired you guys to do a podcast at the beginning?
Well, that's a great question, and we're here to interview you. But let's just answer that one. Kev, actually, what was the reason?
Well, we thought about it for a little while. There was a lot of content going out, a lot of YouTube content and stuff going out for knife making and whatnot. There was nothing that was really Australian, and so a couple of us had bumped heads a few times, and I think we'd all thought about it individually, but then looked at the logistics of doing as an individual person, keeping the content enthusiasm running. And then the three of us sort of just talked about it one stage, realized that we all had that common sort of wish of doing a podcast. And we all get along famously. We've all known each other for a while. We traveled the show circuit in Australia. We know a lot of makers both at home and around the world collectively. So it just gave us that opportunity. And initially we started it, Bob, doing it as a daytime podcast recording that wasn't live. And with all of the COVID stuff that occurred, we decided to put our little theme on it, which was the pubcast. So at night we'd have a few drinks and just break the monotony a little bit for people, because everyone was locked down and, not able to travel to shows and everything like that. So we thought we'd just start this Thursday night drink session where we also talked about knives and got people on. And it's actually just sort of grown from there. And
cool.
I enjoy it, and these guys enjoy it, and I think our listeners enjoy it. It could get pretty messy, though, I have to say.
We call it informal. It's informal. All those podcasts you listen to that are all very well produced and they're very well done? That's not us, Bob.
We're not that. No.
But honestly, we were trying to achieve we were trying to achieve, like, is if you go to a knife show, after the knife show is over, you go sit down in the bar,
Yeah.
talk with your friends, like very
Yeah.
informal. You kick the shit and you make fun of things and knife content, but we didn't want to have like a very, very serious podcast. Like, oh, this week we're going to talk about this grinds on this. Like, we just want to talk like the way we talk after a knife show. That was the whole idea.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's a great idea, but we certainly enjoy it. Anyway.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. The whole premise of us doing this was, as long as it stays something fun to do, we'll continue doing it. So it's all about keeping it lighthearted.
I'm just trying to be nice at the beginning because after I have a pint or two, that may all. So if I can get
Mate,
nice things in on the top.
I can tell you now, if I didn't have things that I really needed to get done after this podcast, I'd have a few day drinks with you. I can guarantee you.
All right, next time.
You gotta pick up the kids. Otherwise, I'll be doing some day drinking too. I can imagine the looks I will get.
Oh yeah, as you go rock up to pick up the kids in an Uber after school.
I
drunk.
already get the looks, like, because I'm going with the knife shirt, or sometimes I'm going, my hands are dirty, and my kids are in a private school. I'm already getting like how come this homeless looking guy is bringing the kids to the private school, or who's this creepy looking dude? Or sometimes the teacher think I'm a weapons smuggler because I got knives in my shirts. So I'm getting enough looks as is. If I go like half drunk, they'll be calling Child Protective Services, I'm sure.
Just don't go. Just give the Uber driver the photographs of your kids and have them.
I've experienced.
That's somebody who's done that before. That's words of wisdom right there.
I don't have kids, so the rules are very different.
I've had the similar experience to Mert. I've got my son reached a milestone. I've only got the one child, my son, and he officially had his last day of what you guys call high school yesterday. They're in exam periods now for about 2 weeks, and then next year he's off to university. So we've made that goal. But I had the exact same experience as Mert. The times that I needed to go to the school for some administrative thing, I was like out of the workshop, covered in muck, wearing a holy knife shirt, going into the front office of, a reasonably nice private school. But the other thing is, they appreciate when you go in and you're just nice and polite. And it's like, I look at it and I say, I don't care how I look because I'm still paying the same fees as everyone else.
My wife's sick of me wearing shirts that have huge, Kevin Cashin swords or Sofreto keyholes and stuff to kids' birthday parties. She's like, all the parents are scared that you're some sort of murderer. I said, no. There's always that 10% that want to talk to me. Exactly. That's where you get the conversation started. G'day, mate. Oh, you're into knives. Yep, I'm into knives too. And there you go. I found my friend. I don't care about the others. I just want the ones that...
Right.
Yeah.
Self-selecting group.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're the ones that at parties will be next to the person's dog talking to the person that likes knives.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's exactly it. Anyway, so you've taken the time out of your day for us, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We'll get into the meat of it. We're going to start off with just a little bit about sort of how it all began, like where you grew up, the area, because most people aren't familiar with America. So you could give us a bit of is it rural or whatever, and then, how your first knife, the first time you held a knife, your first time you sort of got into it from that perspective. Yeah.
So I grew up in the suburbs outside of Detroit, Michigan. So Michigan is the state that looks like a hand. If you look on the map of the U.S., it's sort of in the center and near Canada. And Detroit is known for building cars. So the Motor City, Stevie Wonder and the Temptations and all those guys. And it wasn't rural, I lived in the suburbs and probably the first knife that I remember that had an impression on me was it was a hunting knife, the German hunting knife with a stacked leather handle that was in the basement. So my dad had this workbench, but it was it was a shit show. Everything was piled on top of the workbench, and this knife was in amongst all these kind of loose tools. And I used to go down and pick it up and just was kind of fascinated by it. But I can't say that I was, you know, that there was some sort of resonance that said, oh, this is my future, I'm going to go down this path. I was just fascinated because, you know, you're a young boy and there's a knife and you want to cut something with it. It wasn't sharp, and we had a really shitty whetstone that had completely glazed up. So it was slightly dished and it was completely glazed. I don't know what kind of oil my father or his grandfather, I think it was his grandfather's stone. It wasn't big. It was about this big and like so, but you couldn't sharpen anything on it. And I didn't know anything about any of it. And so I was fascinated by it. But soon just sort of gave up on the whole thing because I was clueless. And you couldn't, like where I lived, you couldn't wear a knife. You couldn't wear a knife to school. I had friends that would go hunting. My dad used to, there were 6 kids in my family. I'm the last. And so my father used to be into hunting and fishing and stuff when my older brothers and sisters were young. And then as he got 6 kids and they got really busy, you know, just trying to keep the household together and make a living, he didn't have time. He wasn't really interested. And like my brother was an Eagle Scout and a Sea Scout. And by the time I came, my brother was the second oldest. By the time I came around, they were just wiped out. My parents were just awesome, right? They're like, fuck it, we're not going to any scout meetings, and here's a bike, go out, have fun. So I'm trying to think where I went from there. Yeah, so I wasn't submerged in any way in the knife culture or the hunting culture. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing. I was the youngest of 5, and it was the same sort of thing. I looked back at photos of my dad when he was, I guess, a younger man, and you know, he did the hunting. They used to go crabbing, and he had these photos of these absolutely monstrous mud crabs we get in Australia, and all of that. And by the time that he got around to me, it was exactly the same thing. Here's a bike. See you later. And that was it.
Just have fun. Just don't get hurt, and we'll see you at bedtime.
Yeah, be home for dinner. Nice. So, in some of the stuff, you know, you've got a lot of, I guess, videos and stuff out there which tell us a little bit about your background and stuff. You, in particular, the one which I guess resonates with a lot of people is the video you had with Anthony Bourdain when he was traveling around looking for the makers. And one of the things which we saw in that was that you started out by looking at sharpening, how to sharpen knives. So your base, I guess, in all of this was not necessarily the knife, but how the knife performed.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you a little bit more background, when I went to school, I was lucky enough in middle school that I had wood shop. So I had an hour every day in the wood shop, and that made a lot of sense to me. What none of my teachers knew, and I didn't know, and my parents didn't know, is that I am dyslexic, and so school was a little bit of a challenge. So I have the capacity to learn, and I'm quite curious, but I don't read very well, and I can't write very well. It's definitely gotten better throughout my life, so that, you know, I've strengthened those skills, but it's really good to know that you have this deficit, and then you could approach learning differently. But those things don't show up in woodshop. So woodshop's pretty easy. You know, you measure, you make a mark, you make a cut, and you've got something tangible. Whereas,
hey, hear that? Stop. Hear that, Mert? Hear that? Woodshop is pretty easy, Mert. Sorry, we've just been hearing about how Mert put some doors on the cupboard.
So
that's
instead
just
of
so
making
great.
fun of my skills to fix things, which I have none. I can make knives, but I cannot put two nails parallel. I suck at it. I said from the get-go. My wife says, "Can you fix this?" I'm like,
No.
"I can't. Do you want me to? Like, do you really want me to?"
How much
Anyway,
how much time and money do you have? I could fix it. It might take
Yes.
6 months, but yeah.
Yeah.
Measure twice, cut 3 times. Done.
Yeah. So for me, it was I didn't learn until in high school. I got woodshop too. So I just got this long, continuous emergence in kinesthetic learning. So I tended to gravitate towards. I loved riding my bike. I was a good swimmer. Anything athletic or anything kinesthetic, like juggling or riding the unicycle, anything athletic felt right to me. It felt like I'm comfortable here, I'm home here. And so then when I went to college, because you got to go to college, right? That was the deal. My folks said, you know, now after I barely got out of high school, and they're like, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I think I want to be a woodworker. I think I maybe make furniture would be cool. And they're like, it's not a good idea. You need to go to school and become an accountant or a lawyer or something like that. And I absolutely dreaded the idea that I knew it was going to be miserable. And it was not very satisfying at all. And then one of my professors, you know, my first term paper, she said, come see me in the office. And she said, have you ever been tested for learning disabilities, blah, blah, blah. She essentially said, you're dyslexic. And so then everything made sense. It was like, oh, no wonder that went that way. And so I left college and traveled across the U.S., made my way to Seattle, and got a job in a hotel and restaurant. Because once you learn to cook or wait tables, you can go anywhere. It's pretty much the same thing. So I loved that I had this sort of gypsy lifestyle. And so I was working at the Four Seasons in Seattle, and I had to buy a set of knives, and eventually they got dull. And I was working with these great cooks. I mean, these guys were super talented. Some had been through culinary school, some had just worked their way up. And nobody knew how to sharpen their knives, which was just weird. It was just bizarre to me. But and so that's when I dug into the sharpening. That's when I thought, I can learn this. I mean, I've taken tougher stuff in college. How hard can it be? And so I began to dig into that topic.
Yeah.
You know, it hasn't changed, Bob. You know, the people in the professional kitchens, 95% still don't know how to sharpen knives. I was a chef. I was a chef till I quit cooking 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. You see people coming in, and first thing as a chef, I will look at their knives. If their tips of the knives are broken, like that teaches you, that tells you about the cleaning habits, about the habits of how they're going to maintain their tools.
Right. Yeah. Although I have to say it's way better today than it was in 1980. I mean, there's so much more information out there, and great stones, and the knives in general are better. And there's this culture. I mean, what you guys are doing is helping to foster and spread information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember the first knife that you bought? The first knife that you ever made? How did you came from the point like I want to sharpen knife to actually I can make a knife from scratch?
So it took me, once I dug into sharpening, and it actually took me quite a while to figure it out. So there was no place to go and buy a good sharpening stone. I ended up traveling all over the United States. So there was an airlines called Eastern Airlines, and you could, for $700, you could go to 6 different cities. So you fly to a city, stop, stay over for whatever length of time you wanted, and then hop back on the plane and go to another city. And so I popped my way across the United States and went to all the big cities. And when I would get to the hotel, I'd look in the yellow pages, and I'd go to all the sharpening shops. And go to the sharpening shop and say, hey, can I see your sharpening room? Would you guys teach me? And they would all go, no, we don't, nobody back there. You can't get in there. And And so then I'd ask to see the work. And a lot of times the work was just absolute shit. I mean, huge scratches on the side of the knives. They just put them on a wet wheel and then quickly licked them on a stone. But like the profiles were not good. The tapers were not good. The finish was not good. And then I got to San Francisco and there were 3 amazing cutlery stores. I mean, really old world craftsmanship, beautiful tapers, beautiful finish. And they let me back. I talked to Peter. Peter was like 72 years old, and he had this leather belt, overhead drive, big water wheels, and about 6 different setup wheels with different abrasives on the wheel. And he took a knife that was dull and he moved it through the system, and it took him maybe 8 minutes, 7 minutes to do the whole thing. It was perfect. So being a kinesthetic learner, I just, you learn visually because you've had to throughout the years. You couldn't read the book or whatever, and so you just learn. And so I just repeated what Peter had done in a pickup truck, in an old bread truck. And then it took, once I had all the machines set up, it took me maybe another year to get good at it, to actually learn to control the tapers and so forth. So, Mert, this is a long answer to your question, but I sharpened knives for like 5 years. And so I would drive to the different restaurants. I had a generator in my truck. And, I'd go in and scoop up the knives and drop off loaners and then do, each restaurant might be somewhere between 10 and 100 knives. So I'd do that 8 hours a day. And then I would cook at nighttime or wait tables.
Wow.
So I had 2 jobs for a long time. And I started to Seattle got really, really popular. And the traffic started to get really bad. So I'm driving this big 30-foot truck through stop and go traffic. And I lost interest. I'm interested in problem solving and technical challenges. And once I had learned to sharpen the knives and I got good at it and I had all these clients, it was boring. All I was doing was grinding and sharpening knives and making money. And I was not being tested at all. So I picked up a Blade magazine. You asked me about Blade, but I was picking up a Blade magazine one day at lunch. And so I'm sitting in the truck eating my sandwich and reading Blade magazine. And at the back of Blade, there was a little ad for the American Bladesmith Society School in Hope, Arkansas. So I just decided to go. And that's when I did the 2-week course and I came home changed. I just knew somehow I'm going to make knives. It's going to be at night. It's going to be on the weekend. It'll be in the garage. But I'm going to do this for the rest of my life because, as a cook, you can spend 2 or 3 days preparing a banquet. You start with roasting the bones, making the stock, reducing it to sauce, preparing all the rest of it. Banquet day, you plate the stuff up, the food goes out. 45 minutes later, all that work is gone. And so you get to start over again. And that's, that's rewarding. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I could take 3 days and make a knife. Even if it was crude, I still got this cool little tool that is not going away.
Mm.
So that was transformation point, and I just went, I'm doing this somehow.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've all been there. The journey's just a little bit different for everyone, but absolutely, we've all been in that position. I like what I do because it's simply that these objects that I'm making, I try and obviously make them as best as I possibly can, and I like the idea that a couple of 100 years from now, somebody will be saying, "Oh, look, that's a Coronoka,"
Yeah.
So that's cool. Anyway, very interesting that it started off with sharpening because it's a lot of makers probably don't spend enough time in that realm. I'm not being rude to anyone there, but you see a lot of knives, particularly on beginners' tables, but sometimes on people that have been making for years, which are very, very thick behind the edge and not capable of doing the job for which every knife should be able to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and people tend to want to. They think that even for yourself, Bob, that it was instant. And it's nice to hear that you spent a lot of time learning before you then actually went into doing, and then you spent 5 years sharpening before you then made that next step. At this day and age, it's tough we've got that balance between having so much information available where people can take it up a lot faster than even when I did it 5 years ago, or nearly 10 years ago now. And there's that sense, I think, where people want that, they want your finish of a knife within the first couple they make. Yeah. And you see it a lot. People, oh, this is the second knife I've made. It's not perfect, but it's like, of course it's not perfect. If it's perfect, my God, on your second knife.
We're going to come find you because that's not cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get perfect. I've 20 years now, 18 years or something. Yeah, but I don't make enough.
So a comment on perfection, because we've always said it depends on how closely you look. If we want to talk about perfection, and I just watched, it's an old, it's not a movie, but it's a short video, and I think it's called 10X, or The Power of 10, and it was done by Ray and Charles Eames, you know, the architects that did furniture, some famous furniture, the Eames chair. Anyways, they did this film, and I think somebody commissioned them, but it's called 10X. And so it starts out with an aerial shot of a couple, and they're having a picnic. And then the camera moves to the power of 10 away, and then continues out and moves.
I've seen it.
And so perfection really is about how closely we're looking.
And that's really it, isn't it? As you get better and better, you start to use an optivisor more and more. Maybe it's older and older, and you start to realise how much the detail starts to matter. Anyway, that's me.
Yeah, we were talking, Bob, before you came on. Both Mert and I had just those bad experiences with timber handles where things weren't quite right, and it's like you get to that stage. I guess as a newer maker or early on, you could be more inclined to say, "Oh, that's all right. I can live with that small mark that don't necessarily want there," or you can easily, tell yourself that it's not really there or it's not that bad. And nowadays, it's when you see something and you know it's not right, and you just go, well, I can't let that go. I've got to just now take that handle off and start again. Yeah. And there's that stage where I wish I'd started doing that earlier when I was making, because I know a lot of knives I sent out, with another 10 minutes or 15 minutes of work on them would have been that much better. And then my ethics about it would have grown faster. Whereas now, wanting to eventually get into the journeyman smith stuff, and COVID's all put horrible stops on that, but it's not resting on that standard where you just go, okay, this is good enough now. That's where I just need to be. Yeah. And I think is it Kaizen? Oh. The Japanese. Yeah. Yeah, about just Kaizen, trying to just continually improve, even if it's a very small amount. Yeah. So I think that's something. I think that's what people need to sort of always look at. Each knife they do, try and do an improvement on one small part of that. And it doesn't have to be profound. Right. Some people might not even know or notice a change that you've done that and it's like I said, being prepared to do those smaller things. So.
And I think it's tricky because the headset, you can't be so paralyzed and frozen that you don't allow yourself to make some mistakes and accept the fact that that's where you're at now and that you want to make an improvement. So you do the best you can. And if you look at it and you go, it's not perfect, but it's also too far to tear down. And so I'm going to accept that this is where I'm at. Or maybe you cut it up and throw it away. But some people get stuck and they stop making, right? And they're trying to make it perfect. And I don't know. I'd just rather see people get completely into it and accept wherever they're at, and then keep improving. Just keep making.
Yeah. We've got a little thing on there. I'm friends with Bill Burke, and Bill's put up a message reminder for me. but it's true. Like it's pretty abrupt what he's written. That's the Australian way, but it's true because I did talk to Bill about doing the journeyman smith stuff, and I've seen some people, very good makers, get into it before I was even interested, and get into that mental state where it's just such a hard process. And a couple of years ago, when I finally got to the US and saw Bill and he saw my knives and stuff, he was like, they're good. There's a few little suggestions about improving stuff. But then when I was talking to him about, doing the journeyman smith stuff, his advice, as he's just said there, was just do it. You make these knives now, make the knives as you do them. Don't become this stress ball and absorbed in it and curl up in the fetal position crying because you've become so obsessed about it. Just make to that standard, and you can do it. And the COVID stuff, Bill, was just basically the delays, mate, like not being able to get over this year. My goal was this year to get over to the Blade Show and do the stuff, and now I don't think we're going to be in Australia allowed to travel overseas until the end of 2021. So it'll be a couple of years away, but it's there. It'll happen.
So we've said it heaps of times on the show. If you're starting to make knives, the best thing you can do is a really reputable, high quality course. And so that's your experience. I'm guessing that you went and did that course, and it was good, a good starting point. Like you skip a lot of the trial and error stuff that a lot of people start with and choose to start with through watching YouTube and all the other stuff that you could still get caught up in today. Bob, you got back from the course. How did you turn this knife sharpening truck into a knife making business, if you like? What happened? What was next?
It's interesting. I immediately borrowed an anvil from a friend of mine. I bought a cheap cross-peen hammer. I decided to make a propane forge. Now, I went in 1992, and so propane forges were not popular. They're not ubiquitous like they are today. I mean, a propane forge is no big deal. You can just throw one together. At the American Bladesmith Society School, there was a propane forge that was built by Tim Zawada. And Tim's a maker in Michigan. He's a really bright guy. He's a pilot. And but he built this overly complex forge. Now I wasn't sure of it at the time, but the nozzle was actually water cooled. So there was imagine a nozzle inside of a nozzle, and that there's an inlet and an outlet pipe. Here's the nozzle, and there's a 5-gallon tank of antifreeze that would circulate just on convective, temperatures, thermostat kind of deal. And I went to the school with a buddy of mine who was an engineer, and they only fired it up once for us. So we learned on coal. So I forged with coal for 2 weeks, and I just thought this is how you do it. And we watched that propane, and they were super careful when they fired this thing up. They were like really concerned and really took their time, and they fired the thing off, and then they only let it run for like 45 minutes. I don't think anybody got to use it. Maybe the instructor used it one time, but it was sort of this sensitive thing. But I said to my buddy, once it was up and running, it was like 2,300 degrees. I thought, what if there's a failure at the weld, at the nozzle, and it starts to squirt antifreeze into the forge? It seems like you could get possibly a steam explosion. I'm not really sure. But I just thought there's got to be an easier way to do this. So when I got home, I got some castable refractory, and I got a 25-gallon oil drum can that I cut in half. I lined it with castable, and I used a hair dryer and a barbecue tank and some black iron pipe. And I built a forge in my garage, and I just started forging leaf springs. And because I just love the activity of it. It just felt cool and primitive and productive. And a buddy of mine stopped by. This is maybe day 3 of up and forging. He comes by, and we used to do crazy stuff together. We used to build all kinds of stuff together. We just have an idea and then we go and build it. And so he had come by on his motorcycle and said, he goes, well, this is pretty wild, because it was in a tiny little 1-car garage. And I'm in there pounding on steel, and he goes, so what's next? How are you going to do this? And they said, I think I'm done driving the truck around. I'm tired of going from restaurant to restaurant. I want a physical location to bring sharpening to me, and I'm going to have a shop there, and I'm going to make knives. I know I'm only paying $2, but I'm going to dive there and sell retail. And the next week, literally the next week, I found this beautiful storefront in the oldest part of town, which is the vibe I wanted, because I wanted an old school kind of feel to the place. And I had a lease by the end of the week, and I built out a shop, and I was there for 6 years.
Excellent.
Yeah, wow.
So, what were you grinding on back in those days? Was how much? What were you using to grind? I mean, we're talking what, early 90s?
92.
Yeah.
92. I took my first class. I bought a Birking. As soon as I got home from the class, I bought a Birking, and I think it was $2,500 or something, which I didn't have, but I put it on a credit card or something and went, because I looked at all the other alternatives: a sidearm grinder and a 1x42, and you know what? Actually, I had a 2x72 because I was using a 2x72 for my sharpening.
Oh, yeah.
So I had that machine early on. So I already had it. I was comfortable with it, and so yeah, that's what I used. Yep.
Got into it.
Yeah, nice. That's a big step. So one of the things I've seen from my trips over to the US last couple of years, I think that most people from Australia would be really envious about, is the size of the buildings that you guys can get to work in at a pretty reasonable price, even if it's a house with a barn or something to work in. The size of stuff, and also getting the equipment that you've got. Can you give us a quick sort of a verbal tour of some of the big pieces of equipment that you've got in your current workshop that you couldn't do without?
Yeah. So I have to tell you about that first store, that first workshop. So I went from a 1-car garage. I found the storefront. The storefront had retail. I mean, I had 200 feet of street-facing windows and 4,000 square feet. It was a huge building. It was way more space than I needed, because the knife shop, fully outfitted, was only 1,200 square feet.
Yeah, right.
I ended up living in there as well for 5 years or something. So, but and let's see, heavy pieces of gear. I have a 500-pound Little Giant, which is like an amazing, beautiful hammer. And actually, Bill Burke really wanted that hammer very, very badly, and he was trying to figure out how to get it. But luckily, my phone call landed like 10 minutes before his did. So that's a beautiful piece of gear. I recently bought a new hydraulic press, an Anyang, 25-ton, and it's just a screaming deal. It was $6,000, $6,500 delivered from China.
Wow.
And the first hydraulic press I built, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a mechanic, and I'm kind of a farmer welder, and I just go, I think this goes here and that goes there, but my tools would rack a little bit, under full tonnage, and I used it for 20 years and it worked great. But we started to come up with new projects and new ideas where any sort of racking or any sort of slop was not advantageous, and I wanted ultimate control. So we thought about building a new hydraulic press, but for $6,000 delivered from China, it's like a fucking bargain. I mean, this thing is such a great deal. Now the controls that it come with, I didn't really care for because it's like electronic valving. So it's either on or off or full throw or off. And so we ripped all that stuff off and put a valve in so you can kind of feather your way, you know what I mean? Sneak up on a press and just give it a little squeeze or give it full press. So the hydraulic press, but you know, I work with Tom Ferry, and so basically I have two people in the shop. Jessica's in the front, but she's also an industrial designer. So she has CAD capabilities. She's also quite good in Photoshop. She's great with a camera. She does a lot of the online sales. So I have and then Tom Ferry is a master smith. And Tom is like world-class engraver, Damascus maker, machine builder. The guy can build anything. So Tom's equipment is in the shop as well. So he has a hydraulic press that's probably 35 tons. He has a hydraulic rolling mill that he built. I have a big rolling mill. It's a 10 horsepower DC herringbone gear rolling mill with 8-inch by 6-inch diameter rolls. And that's a beast of a machine. It will eat you if you're not careful. I mean, it'll just devour a pair of tongs if you're not paying attention. So that's a great piece of gear. What else? We have 2 other air hammers, 60 kilo. So we're kind of spoiled. We have a lot of gear.
And it was, I think, one of the clips I saw, you know, I've always got that, you have workshop envy. I've got a very small shop, but it does what I need. And I've got the equipment there that I need to work with, although I would like more. But it was one of the videos of you making the knives that I saw. And it just reminds me of that typical thing for the US guys that we all want to be. You had like 4 drill presses lined up.
Yeah.
4 2x72 grinders lined up, and then the camera pan, and then you had your big hammer and all the other hammers. And we just sit there and go, drooling about that. But it's the same thing, I guess. It's not instant. And a lot of the makers coming in see that sort of stuff, see my small workshop, which has enough gear in it, and they're like, oh, wow, I need all this stuff. But it's, you know, stuff that you build up to.
Oh,
We got a bit of a battle going on here, haven't we? For the benefit of the people that are listening to this as an audio podcast, Bill Burke's just come on about, you're welcome, Bob. If I had bought that, I couldn't have bought the 750-pound Chambersburg. Hammer battles going on here, is it?
He's bragging the size of his hammer.
It's not the size that counts, gents.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is 30 plus years of equipment. And I started out in a truck.
Yeah.
So, keeping it real.
Speaking of, sorry, Kev. Speaking of instance, a lot of the people who start knowing you recently, they think Bob Kramer was making knives only a few years prior to that New Yorker magazine.
Oh.
Yeah, people not aware of it, that you're making knives a lot before then. Yes, that magazine, that article gave you more exposure, but you were making knives way long before that an article, and that made you rather more well known.
Yeah, maybe 15 years.
Yes.
Before
So in this storefront, how quickly did you go from sharpening in a fixed location to selling knives and paying the bills? Selling knives you made?
Well, my first knives were crude. They weren't, they were chunky and clunky, and I wasn't making kitchen knives, because when you learn in Arkansas, you make fighters and Bowie knives. That's what they teach you to make. And so, and you know, when you first start forging and you're forging a Bowie that's 10 inches long and this wide, that's a lot of knife, you know, and you're still figuring out how to move the material in the right way. And so to forge out a chef's knife, it didn't even occur to me. And who's going to buy a carbon steel chef's knife? Like Japanese chef's knives were not popular. Everything was stainless. It all came from Germany or China or France. When this is 1980, 85 to like 90. I started cooking in kitchens in 1980. So from 80 to, I took my first knife class in 92. So everything is stainless steel. I mean, once in a while you'd see grandma's old butcher knife that was carbon steel, but never in a restaurant situation. So my sharpening business was strong. I had a business that could sustain me. Like I wasn't saving money, but I could live on it. And so as soon as I set up my shop, I had that business already strong. And then I could supplement it with retail sales. So I had 3 8-foot cases filled with commercial cutlery, with pocket knives and 4 different brands of culinary knives. And so we had the sharpening we could count on and the retail sales. And then when I had time, I would make knives. And the first knives I made, they just sat in the case. And the first knife shows that I went to, when the light bulb finally went off and I started to make kitchen knives, I'd go to the Eugene show and they just sat on the table. I never sold a kitchen knife. And other makers would come by, guys that would come by and go, still making kitchen knives? Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. I mean, they didn't say that, but you could see they felt bad for me. Because like this,
yeah, we do that to Mert all the time, but so that's how it started. It's a slow beginning. When did it really all click together and knife making took over as the primary source of income? What was the point? What was the tipping point?
So I've always tried to take a multi-pronged approach and not just count on one aspect, because I never know if that's going to disappear. So I've always done retail of some sort. I've always taken in sharpening, and then I've made custom knives. I think when the custom stuff took off, I'll tell you what, I had customers would come in and they'd say, I want a hunting knife. And so we do a drawing, and then I would make that knife. And inevitably, each project had a problem that I couldn't anticipate when I made the drawing, because I just didn't have enough experience. I knew a little bit about heat treat. I knew a little bit about forging. I knew a little bit about construction. And so I'd get into these projects and I would spend a bunch of time solving that problem to try to make the knife right. And I began to realize like I'm wasting a lot of time. Like I'm not making any money on this project. And as much as it seems expensive to that person, and we're talking a couple $100 for a knife, I wasn't really making any money on the deal because I'm still figuring it out. So I had a customer come in that wanted a dagger, and she said she's going to use it for Wiccan, essentially witchcraft. Wiccan is like,
yeah, right. Yeah. Like an Athenian or something.
Yeah. And so she says, I want a dagger. It's this long, and it needs to have a white handle on it. So I made it with like a white micarta handle, and I made this dagger. It was nice. It was beautiful and clean lines and so forth. And then she came back like maybe 3 or 4 months later, and she said, I need another dagger for my witchcraft stuff. I said, okay, cool. She goes, this one needs to have exactly the same knife that you made, black handle. Okay, cool. And I'm happy for the commission. I'm thinking this is great. But as I'm making the piece, I'm starting to think, I go, I wonder what she's going to do with this knife. I mean, what kind of rituals would you do with a black handle? Not clearly this is a good knife and a bad knife. It was like, what the hell is this thing going to be used for? And I thought, I'm in the wrong business here. I don't want to service this. You know what I mean? Whatever anybody's crazy idea is, doesn't feel like it's not resonating with me. And that night, I just thought, I need to make kitchen knives. I'm not a hunter, and here I am making hunting knives. I'm making wicked daggers. I don't know anything about that. And I thought, I know how to use a chef's knife. I've used a chef's knife for 10 years. And all the stuff that I learned from sharpening, the thousands of knives that I've handled, I know what this thing should look like and feel like, and all of the shit that I'm going to eliminate and all the stuff I'm going to put into it. The light bulb went off. Everything was clear. Like, that's exactly what I need to do. So I started to build them. And within, I want to say, a month, I started to get publicity. The local paper was interested because the Food Network was taken off, right? So the Food Network was 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Somebody was on this channel cooking food. So people were into wine and food and all this stuff. And here's this guy making an old-fashioned chef's knife. So I got a lot of publicity.
Yeah, right. And they were using the chef knife on the Food Network, if I understood that correctly?
No, but
just as a flow-on effect.
Yeah. Any magazine said, oh, this network is taken off, and the magazine needs to be filled with content. So they're looking for any content that is relative to this new food world that's taken off.
Got it. Yeah, no, fair enough. And that was sort of a few years into the journey.
That was 96.
Right. So you're still in the last years of being at that retail store.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you're probably known also, Bob, with regards to your kitchen knives for the Damascus and also the inclusion of things like Meteorite. When was the first knife, or at what stage was the first knife that you decided to add that element to it?
The Meteorite thing, I'm trying to think when that started. You know, I for a while I had an import store, so I used to, I had 3 jobs essentially. I was waiting tables, and then because I had this huge 4,000 square foot store, I thought I love to travel, and so as I was traveling, one time I went to Guatemala, and we went to this craft up in the mountains. We went to this craft event where all of the merchants would lay their stuff out in the square, in the city square, and there was just such beautiful things, great masks and beautiful wooden carvings and this embroidered clothing. And so, you know, I got home and we were drinking some beers, and I'm kind of penciling out how much all this stuff is going to cost. We decided to bring a bunch of stuff back and set up a quick and dirty little store. And it worked. All the stuff took off. So I had the opportunity to travel to different places in the world. And one of the places that I went was to Java. We went to Bali and bought a whole bunch of cool stuff because the crafts are like extraordinarily well made. And then we also went to Java just to see what the hell was over there. And we went to the Kraton, we went to the palace, and there's this big meteorite. And I was also looking at all the krises that are for sale in Bali, in Java. I'm like, these things are super cool. And the whole story about them is really cool. And so that's when I heard about the meteorites.
So what is, sorry to interrupt, what is the story behind a kris?
So a kris is sort of the religious completion of a young man's sort of becoming a man. Right? It's kind of like, I guess, in Catholicism, you have confirmation, or it's a ritual.
Yeah.
You have to go through. And so a kris is these wavy knives, but they could also be straight. They're anything from a straight to 23 different curves. And so the young man, when he is of the right time and age, he would go and sit with a bladesmith, and they're known as empus. And so the king has the court poet on one hand, and he has the empu on the other hand. because in a lot of societies, bladesmiths were sort of like magicians. They're taking dirt and they're turning it into a tool. They're turning it into a weapon. And I mean, if you have the weapons and the big dudes and the strategy, you get the gold and the girls and the land. And that's what it's all about. So these guys, so the Empus were really close. And a Chris is this, it's more than a knife. It's not used as a knife. It's kind of like a magic wand. It's an antenna for attracting magic into this kid's family's life. So the kid would go and sit with the Empu, and they would talk about, like, what do you want? What's your desire? What are you trying to do for your family? And in some ways, the kid was trying to bring power to the family. In other ways, the kid was trying to bring more money or more fame or more whatever it was. And so the Empu would sit and listen and talk and then decide what kind of a knife this kid needed. And that would depend on how many curves. So the knife itself represents the Naga, or the sleeping serpent in the sea. And depending on how many curves depends on how rapidly the Naga is moving. And so there was a big meteor fall in Java, and this meteor split into, and part of it is still under outside of the palace, and it's still under a pagoda, and they give offerings to it every day because it's magical. It came from the astral plane. The other part of it, they gave to the Empu. They busted it up and they doled it out somehow. And so these guys would take something from the astral plane and combine it with the terrestrial plane and fold them together. We're taking the magical powers from above and the earth and mixing them together and incorporating it into this serpent-like knife that we then give to the kid. And, you know, they would do prayers, incantations. They put it into the coal fire as they were burning it. And I love that shit. Those stories are so fucking cool. And, you know, it's real. It's still alive. And there's stories in Bali about, you know, each family has a compound, and they have a little temple within the compound. It might just be a little box where they put offerings every day, a little bit of rice, a flour, some chopped up fruit. But they also do these offerings out in front of their house and on the street and in everybody's bedroom at the threshold. And there's also, outside of that, in the village, there is a temple. And often there is a box that a Chris is kept in the temple. It is like a crucifix in a Catholic church or something. These things are powerful. There are crazy stories about, on certain auspicious days, that all the Chrises from all the temples come out and swirl around the palace. There's tales of generals go into battle, and they pull out their Chris, and a stream of bees come shooting out the front of their Chris and envelops the encroaching army, and they win. There was a temple in Bali that had burned down 3 times. And they finally rebuilt it with cinder blocks because they said the Chris is too powerful. It's so powerful it resonates, and it just burned the temple down. And so in this particular temple, cinder block, where the box is, there's like a scorch mark on the fucking wall. And they're like, Chris, okay? Don't fuck around with it. And so I got infected with these great stories, and then also the technical challenge of, like, where the fuck do you get a meteorite, and how does it form? You know, push this shit together. So that's how the meteorite one started.
That's cool.
I kind of feel bad. We live closer to Java than you do, and yet I have no idea. But
that's just thinking the same thing.
Before, but yeah. I need to look into that. Need to get out more, probably.
It's cool. Do you guys? I could pull one out of the drawer if you'd like to see one. I have a beautiful.
Well, we are never going to say no.
Not going to say no.
Yeah, grab it. Oh, see that?
What's happening?
Okay, I'm coming. Hold on. Don't go away.
No, I do this some episode. Yeah, we're not going anywhere. Oh, wow.
Yeah, right.
Whoa. So what materials is that? Tell us about it. Tell us the story.
This is fine silver with gold, 24 karat gold overlay. And this character is called Rangda. So Rangda is a giant that lives in the forest. And so Rangda watches over the kris. When you put the kris in its resting place, wherever it is in your house, Rangda is protecting the kris. And when you wear the kris, you stick this in your sarong, and now Rangda is watching your back. Right? How fucking cool is that? And this,
Awesome.
I watched them make these handles. This starts with silver beads that are about the size of like a small pebble. And they melt it and they make a sheet and they forge the sheet out and then they eventually raise this.
That's made from sheet. It's not cast.
It's sheet. This is chased and repoussé. This is all chased and then overlaid with gold. And then here's the, let's see, where am I going? Here's the blade.
Yeah, wow.
Look at this work in here. This is all hand filed in. And there's so much symbolism. This represents a boat because they were seafaring people. I mean, they lived in the water and they came from like India or another place in Southeast Asia. So this represents the boat. This represents an elephant's tusks for like strength and endurance. And they're just cool things.
And yeah, right. Okay. What's the material in that one? What are they using? Are they is it their own steel or are they?
Yeah. So it's their own steel, and then there's meteorite in here. This one's not terribly bright. It's not super high contrast, but this is all hand filed and polished to get this groove in. They're not using any grinders. This is all bamboo sticks and abrasive.
Wow.
Right? I mean, gorgeous work. Here's another one. This is the same thing. This sort of represents the boat, but then you can also see the Naga spirit, and then there's gold on the blade here. So I think I just got it. I got turned on to the whole meteorite thing from those guys, and also I live in the Northwest. I live and there's a huge. There were indigenous people that lived all the way up to Alaska. So the western coast of the United States was incredibly rich in salmon and sea otters and lumber. I mean, the rivers in Alaska, when the salmon would come back, they literally said you could walk over the river on the backs of salmon. That's how big the runs were. So people had shellfish and crabs, and so they lived quite a rich life, and they had time for their craft. So a lot of the Northwest crafts they look simple, but they're very sophisticated. And the Tlingit Indians used to make these big fighting daggers. And the myth is, the legend is that the first blacksmith was a woman, and she forged this big Tlingit dagger out of a meteorite. And it's not true, but it's a cool story. So I was inspired, and I made a big Tlingit dagger and incorporated meteorite. So it started there.
Well, fair enough. And so this legend, how old is that legend? Is that like thousands of years old? That legend of forging a dagger from a meteorite, or?
Question. I would say it's probably not thousands. I'd say it's a few, maybe 500.
So my question is, if it's not real, how did they know that you could forge the material from a meteorite? What?
How stuff kind of gets mashed up together.
Mixed in truth?
Yeah. In Nova Scotia, there is a big meteorite that is on the ground, and they have knocked off a few pieces of it, but and they've made some like a halibut hook. So they have carved some small hooks out of it, or a harpoon, like a whale harpoon or a seal harpoon. So I think they knew that there's this magical material that's on the eastern side of the country, and that stuff slowly migrates over, and then it's kind of magical. Like, hey, look, I got this cool thing, and so then the first iron, because there's no steel on the West Coast, there's no iron deposits, but there's copper. There's a lot of copper in Alaska, and so it was a chieftain's kind of a valuable thing. These copper shields, they would make these copper shields out of it, and it showed his wealth. And he would cut pieces off of it and give it away, and it showed how wealthy he was. So they knew how to forge copper. They knew that meteorite was a super exotic thing, and eventually they would get iron off of Russian clipper ships. So the Russians came over and realized that there were all these sea otters, and they used to call sea otters soft gold, because their pelts are unsurpassed for warmth and water resistance. And there were thousands and thousands and thousands. They were easy to kill and catch. So I think they mashed all that stuff together, and when they made the first big daggers, they just went, oh yeah, a woman did it. It's from a meteorite. And sorry, I'm just talking a lot here.
Bob, that's fine.
That's kind of the point, Bob. Yeah.
Bob,
Yeah.
when you make knives,
Hmm?
when you make knives, where do you get your inspiration? Because when we look at your knives, like, you're not seeing just like a knife with the steel. Like, there's so many meanings behind it. There's so many symbols that you're using. So like all of your knives are coming with a theme. How'd you get the inspiration? Where'd you get your inspiration?
It's a good question. I'm always trying to make something that's layered. So I was successful at making a tool, and I got to the point where I could make more orders for 8-inch carbon steel chef's knives were coming in than I could fulfill. And it got to the point where I didn't enjoy it anymore. You know what I mean? I think I went into making knives because I wanted this creative lifestyle, and suddenly I had a factory job, and I was just cranking out 8-inch chef's knives, and I wasn't happy anymore, and I thought I need to do something else. So then I began to experiment with Damascus and what that potential was, and I think philosophically we're just always trying to push it. We got to the point where we really understood the material and how it would react for the most part. I mean, I'm still learning, but then Tom and I discovered how we could do figurative stuff. And now the whole thing exploded. It just opened up. So now we can actually put a message into the blade. Prior to that, we were just making a tool, and we were trying to make it technically sound, or aesthetically beautiful and technically sound. But now we can do all three. We can make it technically sound, aesthetically beautiful, and have some sort of a message in there. I mean, look, I have a huge ego, and I'm competitive, like a lot of guys that are in the knife making industry. And so I'm always looking for an edge, not to make a pun, but I'm always looking like, how do I differentiate my work? How do I make it stand out? I got one life, I got one time I'm going through. Like, how do I make it? How do I make a statement here? And so that's what we're trying to do. And I want the statement to be one that's kind of universal, and maybe, yeah.
Nice.
I totally get it. And while Bob's been talking here, we've just been cycling through his Instagram. You'll be able to find it, Bob Kramer Knives.
So Bob, it'll be a hard question, but what was the most memorable knife you made? it'll be like if I ask a knife maker to pick their favorite knives, it'll be like asking them to pick their favorite kids. But I'm sure you made a knife that's more memorable to you, like technically better or not than the others. Is there a knife like that?
The first Clinket Dagger was quite memorable. My Mastersmith Dagger was memorable because it was fucking challenging and really hard for me to make.
What year was that?
97.
Right. So yeah, early. You did the course 92 thereabouts. So 5 years. That's
Individual
respectable.
results might vary, guys. Don't just
Yeah,
sign
yeah,
up to
yeah.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Got the course in 92.
I took the course and I realized that I said, oh, shoot, I just got to pay my $50 a year. I can be an apprentice. And then if I pass this test 5 years from now, I could actually be a master of something. That's crazy. And I thought, I want that. I'm going to get that. So, you know, I did my journeyman smith and then I got busy running the store. I had 2 employees and, you know, there's a lot of stuff to sort of take care of to keep the thing running. And I swear to God, it was 30 days before the Atlanta show. And I thought, oh shit, I got to do my Mastersmith blades. And I, luckily I didn't have a wife or a girlfriend at the time. So I worked like 16 hours a day on just making it. But the Dagger was like overwhelmingly challenging. And I made 3 of them before I got to one that I thought would pass.
Yeah, in 30 days.
Whole knife. I just did 3 plates.
Yeah, right. In 30 days.
I did all 5 of my test knives in 30 days.
Wow.
Including
I'm still working on my Dagger. I started with Kevin Cashin about 3 years ago. So there you go. Just putting it out there.
I was obsessed.
Yeah, but Bob, the perspective also with that comment from Corin, Bob, is he makes 1 knife a year
Okay.
with a blade that's 2.5 inches long.
He probably still uses the same belt that he's using from 2012. The spider webs on the grinder.
Who, Bob, in your early years of doing your knife making, especially when you went into the chef sort of knives, who were your influences in there? Or did you just go off the cuff and go, I'm going to do my own thing and I'm just going to let this evolve naturally?
Yeah. Nobody else was doing it that I knew of.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody else was doing it. And I had a real strong opinion of what a chef's knife should look and feel like. And I just thought, I want to bring that to life and see how it works, see if people like it, see how hard it is to make.
Yeah, nice.
And it hasn't changed a whole lot since then. Pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah.
In the previous clips that Corin was showing of your Instagram, saw a really nice folding knife in there too.
Yeah.
You were saying before about not putting all of your eggs in one basket. Is that the same sort of thing? Like, obviously, you're a very reputable person. Well, obviously, a very reputable person for the chef knives. That market's probably unlikely to go anywhere south at this stage. But was the diversity into the folding knives just to break up that, or was it something that you just went, yeah, I really like these things, I'm going to make this is another part of my market as well?
I think I've always been fascinated by folding knives and never took a lot of time to learn to make them. And then about 6 years ago, I wondered where Tom Ferry was. So I'd see Tom Ferry once in a while at knife shows or hammer-ins. And I've always liked Tom. He's got tremendous amount of integrity. He's a really good maker and he's a really talented guy. And I just like the guy. And so one day I looked on Instagram 6 years ago and I'm like, where's Tom Ferry? And strangely enough, he had just posted a picture. So I messaged him and I'm like, Tom, what are you doing? How are you? What's going on? So we both picked up the phone. We had like an hour phone call to kind of catch up. And I said, because I had offered him a few years prior, I said, if you're ever interested in making Damascus, I have more demand, and you make beautiful steel. If you want to make some steel, I'll buy it from you and use it in my knives if you want. And so when we're on the phone call, I said, hey, did you ever consider, what we talked about making the steel? Let's collaborate. Let's make a thing. And he said, okay. So I said, so we had gotten together and we're like, what are we going to make? And it's like, is it going to be a kitchen knife? It's kind of like, yeah, I guess it could be a kitchen knife. But I go, your thing is folding knives and my stuff is food. Let's make a picnic knife. Let's make a friction folding picnic knife with a bottle opener on the end of it. And let's just see what happens. And so we said, okay, we're going to do carbon fiber. We'll do, I can't remember what the steel is. It's, anyways, it's a nice stainless steel. And so I designed the blade. He basically engineered it, made sure everything was working right, put them together. I sharpened them, marked them, and marketed them. And it went incredibly well. And I said, are you happy? He's like, yeah, that was fun. I like that. And I said, let's do another one. So we just kept going down that hole. And eventually, 3 years ago, I moved from Olympia to Bellingham, which is about 2.5 hours away, further north towards. And I said, Tom, you should move. This is a great town. And I'm going to have a big shop. And we can work together every day. Because there's something so much richer when you're collaborating, to have somebody in the shop that you can bounce stuff off of. They'll shoot down ideas or they'll encourage other ideas. Very often I'll say, hey, Tom, what about this? And he'll say, oh, yeah, and then we could do this. And we're able to sort of compound or enrich each other's ideas. And then there's a certain amount of energetic enthusiasm, like when we go to prove out a piece and you dip it in the etch and you bring it back, you're like, fuck, dude, look, that fucking worked. Oh my God, it looks like a goddamn feather. What the fuck? And so that's fun to be able to share that. And so that's the folder, is that it's really Tom's thing, and sometimes I'll drive the design and sometimes he drives the design.
Yeah, nice.
Awesome.
Very nice.
No, I'm looking at pictures of them on Instagram as she's talking. Yeah, mind blowing. You should have a go at a barrel knife. If you need any help, I'm more than happy. There's very old design. Anyway.
No, they're cool.
They're a Swedish folding knife. Swedish design.
Yeah, I like it.
Cool. And I was just lost looking at beautiful folding knives on your Instagram, and I highly recommend anybody listening get on, check out Bob Kramer's Instagram. What other social media are you big on? Do you market on?
Instagram.
Just Instagram. I noticed that most of your knives, if not all, are being done through basically an auction sort of format.
Yes.
So the knives go up and they're auctioned off. Everyone, most or all?
Once in a while, we'll put stuff in the store. So we have a line that we build that's called Shokunin, and we sort of refined the process down. 100 chef's knives or santokus, and we have a bamboo shaped handle that we put on those. So those you can get in the store. Excuse me. Once in a while, we'll do a run of carbon fiber folding knives.
Yep.
Those just go into the store. But the stuff that we spend a lot of time on, or that is sort of state of the art, those get auctioned off.
No, that's a great idea in a custom world where some people don't get the value, and that you want to really be appealing to those that do and that are willing to spend the money on it. So I think it's a good way to sort of maximize I'm not going to say the profit. It's nothing to do with that. It's about giving people what they want for the price they're willing to pay. That's what it is.
So for me, it's about letting the market set the price. So
Exactly.
So for years, I had the good fortune of being back ordered, and I'd work weekends, I'd work 60-hour weeks, I'd work on holidays, and my wife is in the financial world, and so she said, "You're not charging enough for your work," and she said, "If you have a back order of 2 years, you're not charging enough for your work," and I'm just honestly, I just make kitchen knives, and I thought at the time when we had this discussion, my knives were like $600 for a chef's knife, and I go, it's crazy. Like, I was a cook, like $600 for a chef's knife. That's a lot of money. It doesn't make any sense to me. And she goes, it doesn't matter if it makes sense to you. You're not the customer. You're just making them. You got 2 years of back order. You're not charging enough. Then I had a customer buy a knife from me and write me a 2-page letter. He's a Silicon Valley guy, super wealthy dude. And I sent him a Damascus piece. He wrote me a 2-page letter explaining all of the reasons why I wasn't charging enough money. So I just decided, okay, you guys, you two people are super smart. I know that. Let's put one on eBay, and I'll put a reserve on it, which is my safety net price. I would normally charge $1,800 for this Damascus chef's knife. We'll put it on eBay with a reserve and just see where it goes. We'll put it up for 3 days, and then we'll just see where it goes and let the market set the price. So it was really a way for me to get out from underneath trying to establish what is the right price for this knife.
And it's a great thing. So many conversations I have, because whilst I only make one knife a year, or sometimes two. Last year was a 2-knife year. The conversations I have with people are all about knife making. The business I work for here, we sell knife making supplies. We're the biggest distributor of knife making supplies in Australia. So I talk to an awful lot of knife makers, and this question of how do I set my price comes up all the time, and it's a really difficult one, because if somebody made a knife that's been doing it 6 months and it looks like one of your knives, for example, not saying it's copied, but just saying it looks like one of your knives, doesn't mean it's valued at the same value, because there's the differences are more than just in the photo, what you see in the picture. And there's a lot of people that come into the scene and they attempt to charge too much, but there's far more people that come onto the scene and totally undervalue their work.
Yeah.
And there's some of those people. Can I say Ian Stewart? Am I allowed to say it live? I just did, didn't I?
He's the one that doesn't charge enough. So we're clear on that.
Yeah. But he's doing magnificent, beautiful work and fantastic stuff. And he'll go to a knife show and he'll sell 40, 50 knives. But he lives off the grid. He says, my expenses aren't high. I live off the grid. I'm retired and I do everything by hand, and that's all I do. And so why should I charge? And I'm like, anyway, it's such a difficult realm, and letting the customers decide is a smart ploy. I like it, particularly when you've hit the master level that you have. So, yeah, I can't value my own work. I don't know how to do it at all.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Challenging.
So Bob,
somebody else has to do it.
If you were to give any advice to any starting knife makers, what will that be?
Oh, that's a great question. Right, I'm trying to think of where to start. It's such an open-ended question. Be willing to make mistakes. I would start with stock removal and master stock removal. Look for clean design. Try to get super clean clean lines and get a good design, understand your heat treatment. It's so crucial. It's absolutely invisible. Nobody knows until they actually use the piece and sharpen the piece how well it's going to perform. And the heat treatment is everything, and it takes time to understand how that works and how that material moves. I personally would stick with one steel. Pick one steel. Decide, are you going stainless? Are you going carbon steel? And then stick with that one steel and experiment and be willing to grind out 6 simple blades of the same size and look at mastering the grind, and then heat treat all 6 of those blades and then torture them, like cut shit, bend stuff with it, beat them with the hammer. And so you actually understand what it is that you did. It's like making a dish and then eating it. It's like making food and tasting it as you go along. People that cook and they don't taste their food, it's like, what are you doing? How do you know what's going in there? And then they don't eat it at the end. They just send it out. It's like, how are you going to improve if you don't, take a bite and taste it and go, how am I going to adjust this recipe? I think you got to do, my suggestion would be to do that with the heat treatment. And now if you feel comfortable with the heat treatment and the grind, now go buy some fancy wood and put a handle on there and then take it to market. But grow slowly. Like, these things take time. If you're going to be an artist and you want to learn to draw, you get a bunch of sketchbooks, and the sketchbooks shouldn't be precious. It's practice pads. And once you fill that book up, save it or throw it away. That's not for sale. This is to train yourself on how to be an artist, how to see, how to get it onto paper, how to express yourself. And there's such a rush to, people romanticize, they see YouTube, they see Forged in Fire, and they're like, I want to do that. And so they get the costume and they get a couple of the tools and they bang a knife together, but the depth isn't there. You know what I mean? And so I would say, go slow, become the craftsman, trust your work. I mean, make it so that it is really reliable and that you go, yeah, that's the way I want it to perform. The thing is that there's a learning curve to know what a knife should be like on a stone. You got to buy 2 or 3 knives. You got to buy a Japanese piece, and you got to buy a production piece, and you got to make a piece yourself and put them all on the stone and kind of work it and go, oh, there's a real difference here. Some of these knives chip out like crazy, and it's a problem in the heat treatment. And I don't care if it came from a big manufacturer or not. They make mistakes as well. And so when you have that, when you start to develop that sense, now you know the craft and you can move forward confidently. And when you sell that knife over the table, you're like, I'll back it up. I mean, my guarantee is, as long as I'm alive and still making knives, I'll stand behind that knife, and that's how confident. And because if it fails, if I made a mistake, if I fucked up somewhere in the heat treatment or whatever, I want to make that right. I hate this high production stuff that we buy, some of this Chinese stuff that's advertised on Instagram or whatever, and you get it and you're like, this is an absolute piece of garbage. What they have figured out is the promotional end of it. The promotional look amazing. And then you get the thing and you're like, there's no quality here. There's no spirit here. There's no craftsmanship here. And I think what we're trying to do is not only create a lifestyle for ourselves, which is incredibly rich and that can provide for you for your whole life, not only the creative part, but the financial part, the engagement part, and the fraternity part. But you can change somebody's life that you sell this tool to, because now they get the experience of using like a really beautiful tool if it's real. If it's bullshit, you've just popped their bubble, and they're gonna be like, damn, I'm disappointed. The guy looked like the real deal.
Well, I think also because of the changing times, you were saying about the new makers to be patient and get better at their craft spot, when they look on the social media and see the makers who are doing it well or who look seemingly successful, they rather focus on the marketing side of things versus getting their crafts better, because I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy. So which one is the one that you can master easier? Make it nice for that long, or marketing? Marketing seems to be the always easier route to go to.
Yeah, and I sort of I feel bad for some of the young people because they have been steeped in this realm since they were kids. They've had some sort of a device since they were kids. And so it's at their fingertip to like take a video or a shot of themselves, and that's all they know. And look, we all know this stuff is poison. It's not good. It is a vehicle. I use Instagram, but it's fucking with your head. Like I'm looking for those likes, and I know it's an illusion. It's not real. That's not how my business runs.
Mm-hmm.
I post those pictures because part of the reason is now I get to speak to you guys, and I wouldn't know you guys otherwise. Like I haven't been to Australia, but you know my work, and so we had a connection, and then you reached out, and now we're talking. That's cool. But as far as believing what's happening via social media, that's like poison and crazy, and we got to kill that shit, or at least we have to talk about it. We have to acknowledge it and use it for what it is. But I don't think you can. I know you can't jump from I'm going to slam a knife together and put it on Instagram and make $1,000. That's wrong. It's wrong. This is bullshit.
We see it a lot, though. So part of your advice, which just rang true with me for the new maker, is regarding the steel choices and sticking with a particular steel or maybe a couple of different steels and then learning the most out of them. That's one of the things, especially with, we have a Facebook group where we get a lot of people asking questions. And that's one of the key things which just, I don't know, it just does my head in a little bit, is you get these guys and they're like, oh, I've used 1075, I've made 2 knives, now I'm using 80 CRV2, but what about this and what's the best steel? And it's like, man, you've made 2 knives with a steel and you've not even touched the surface with it. So hearing that from someone like yourself as well, this is sage advice to go out to the people that listen to this in the future, is work on a steel till you know how it works and you can get that heat treat down. Like I said, so you could put 100% guarantee on it. If it doesn't work properly, it's probably not the user, possibly not the user. It's probably something we've done in the heat treat. Or you can stand back on it by saying, I'm so confident that I've used this steel so much, I know the ins and outs of this steel, you should not have a problem with it.
Here's the other deal, is that these steels, if you look at the recipes, if you look at the heat treater's guide, that's what we use. I don't know if you guys use the heat treater's guide, but essentially it's this big, thick book that's got all these recipes of all these different industrial steels. And if you look at the recipes, there's a parameter for each element. So let's say 52100 for example, and I'm going to pull these numbers off the top of my head, so they could be slightly off, but essentially 52100 should have something like 0.90 carbon to 1.3 or something like that percent. So you've got this spread. The manganese also has a spread. So the manganese can be, again, riffing, 0.45 to 0.65% manganese. And so forth. For the chrome, the same thing. You've got this variation. If you start to push those elements, let's say the particular batch that you bought is on the high side and it's got 1% carbon, and the manganese is also on the high side, it's 0.65, and the chrome is also on the high side, it's 0.70. That steel compared to 52100, it's still within spec, that's at 0.90% carbon. It's on the low side of the manganese and the low side of the chrome. Those two steels are going to heat treat differently, but they're both labeled as 52100.
Bob, I can personally attest to that. I managed to get a Hamon, proper clay quenched Hamon in 52100 they had a probably lower manganese content.
Yeah.
It was something that seemed to be like, didn't make sense, but must have a lower manganese content.
So yeah, there's a lot going on in steel. I sell a lot of it, and I'll tell you right now that 99% of what we sell in steel is hype. So it's the latest fashion. I call it the steel wank.
Yep.
Yeah, and we see it all the time. People bringing up and saying, "Oh, I need some CPM 90V because it's the best steel in the world." It's like, how are you gonna heat treat it? What's heat treating?
Right.
What's heat treating? Doesn't it come hard?
Hey.
And you have these conversations where you think, yeah, you really please get some 1084 and let's get started.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, all good.
Absolutely.
Can't agree with that one more.
So, do we want to go to a couple of? Do we have enough user questions down the list on the side there?
Yeah,
Carl,
well,
we can ask?
I did have a couple there, mate, and the first one was from Andrew Smith, which was you're going to come out to Australia and do a symposium. Now, I have personally spoken to you via email about coming out to a symposium, and I think there was a show on or something on at the time, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Do you recall? I can't.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what was going on. We'd love to come. It's a long flight, and so for me, just getting on a flight and coming down is I really got to plan that out, especially these days with Covfefe and all that shit that's going on. But but I'd love to. I'd love to come. I'd love to meet you guys in person, and I'd be happy to do a symposium. So let's just keep working on it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we will. We've had
Awesome.
we've had quite a few. Bob, we had Kyle Roy last year, and Rodrigo Sofredo, Kevin Cashin, Bill Burke.
We look after our guests. We look after our guests when they get here. That's
great.
If you look at my Instagram, you'll see that. Okay, so the next one was from Wendy Tomkin, who says, you might have covered this. When learning, did you find that you often make the same piece several times before you're happy with it?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, it was what I was saying at the beginning or a few minutes ago that, you make 6 or 7 pieces. I'll tell you when we really learn a tremendous amount. If we do a run, let's say we do 50 folding knives and they're all identical, man, you learn, there's so much to be learned about doing 50 pieces, one right after another, because you get an idea early on, but there's a certain timidness about maybe executing it. And after you've seen 25 of them, it becomes clear, like, absolutely, I need to make this change. I need to round this or whatever it is. And I actually think that this goes for almost anything, that you need to do multiple pieces of a thing before you start to drop down through the layers of understanding what the hell that thing is, what it really means to, like, refine that as far as you can go. Because I know for me, I'm kind of a slow learner, so I'll make a thing and I'll look at it and I'll handle it, and then I'll go to sleep and I'll continue to think about it, and I look at it the next day and I see new things that I didn't see when I was making it. Sometimes if I'm making a piece, I'll get to a certain point and I have to set it down, go somewhere else in the shop, do something else for a period of time. Maybe it's a half an hour or 2 hours. And then I'll go back and pick it up and just try to see it with complete fresh eyes. So yes.
Yep. Good response. Scott Gregan says, and I don't know if this is true, Scotty's a young knife maker. I would say he's well under 20, running out of Brookdale in New Zealand. He's a regular listener. Amazing how one of your knives sold for $231,000. To your knowledge, is that the most expensive chef knife ever sold? And if so, how does it feel to hold that title?
As far as I know, it's probably the most ever sold. It's a mixed bag to hold that title. I don't really feel like it's a title. The result of it, I mean, the reason that it sold is not, great news. It was Bourdain's knife. He was a cool guy. I'm sorry he's gone. If I'd rather have him here than hold that title.
Well, tell us the story about it, because many of us, myself included, don't know the story. And I'd say probably Scott doesn't know the story either. He's probably looking at just
from the sounds of it.
Yeah. So, but you guys know who Bourdain is, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I don't. I'm just a retard. I just live under a rock. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Bourdain was a chef in New York. He ran a French bistro in New York City in Manhattan called Leal, and he was like a lot of chefs in that it's kind of it's a rough and tumble gig, right? I mean, you work hard, you party hard. There's often a lot of drugs and it's and you make just enough to get by. It's kind of like factory work but Bourdain was a super creative guy, quite a good writer, and he wrote an article that I think got picked up in the New Yorker, and it got tremendous amount of traction, and then somebody offered him a book deal, and he wrote a book called Kitchen Confidential, which he essentially wrote what was going on in kitchens in the 1980s, how much cocaine was being snorted, how much sex was being had, all the shit that was going on in the cooler. And it was a great book, and it was really well written, and it went like bestseller. So this guy goes from being, a heroin user and running this French bistro to now being a renowned writer and in demand. And he has a great perspective, a great voice. He's very articulate. He's really smart. And that he was able to parlay that book into a TV show called No Reservations, and traveled all over the world and ate with people. And he became quite a celebrity. And I met him when I was up for an award. It's called a Rare Craft Award. And I ended up winning the award. And we had lunch together, he and myself and my wife, and got to know him a little bit. And then about a year later, they came to my shop and shot a video called Raw Craft, and got to know him a little bit then. And he asked if I would make him a knife. So I made him a knife with a meteorite in it, folded and so forth. And I sold it to him for what I would normally, actually a little bit less than I would normally sell it for. I didn't auction it off. That was the deal. I just said, I'll make it for you, and it'll be $5,000. And he said, okay. So I gave him, I sold him the knife, and then he committed suicide a couple of years ago, and they auctioned off a lot of the things that he had collected throughout his life, and he's known all over the world, and people wanted the knife. It was like the top thing that went in his estate. Because he was a chef, because he was passionate about food, because that's what he focused on. And so it went for big dollars. The thing I'm really grateful for is that, one, I got to know him and hang out with him a little bit. But also that money, some of that money went to scholarship for chefs at the Culinary Institute of America. And then a part of the money also went back to his family. So I think that that's all
Beautiful.
Good stuff.
So you didn't sell a knife for that money. End of story. End of story. And the men's health issues that have been raised there, another subject close to all our hearts and touched on it several times in the podcast. So anybody feeling that way should not think how valuable their knives will be afterwards, but rather get in touch and let someone know what their problems are and let us help. I think that's the message there.
Bob, that episode you guys did was, for me, like watching your two superheroes talking about the rock band that you enjoy. Like something that you wouldn't see like in a parallel universe kind of thing. It was so cool to see, because I followed them for years as a former chef, and obviously I was following your craft as a fellow knife maker. So that day when you opened the Instagram was a sad day to learn that news. It was a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, agreed.
I took something a little different out of that video, and it was when you poured a glass of whiskey at the end and the camera panned down, and I was like, nice, these guys are drinking whiskey out of jars. Workshop whiskey. It doesn't matter if it's out of a paper cup or a glass jar. That's the best drink.
Yep.
I've had a lot of drinks with a lot of guys around the US in various vessels, but the same thing is just enjoying that drink at the end of the day.
Amen.
Guys, yep. Yeah, absolutely. Actually enjoying a drink at a knife show as well. That's
Oh yeah.
We've got a couple more questions. You got time for a couple more, Bob? Or
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so Corey Cunningham says, what's the biggest knife making business failure, and how did you get past it?
Oh, good question. The biggest knife making failure. God, I'm stumped, and it's not because I haven't had a lot of failures. I think maybe because there's so many failures, and you just kind of go, okay, that happened. I gotta fix this. I have to repair this. I mean, I remember telling somebody at one point, I'm gonna write a book on knife making, and it's gonna be thick, big book, and on the first page, it's going to say, solve the problem in front of you. And the rest of the book will be completely empty. There's nothing else in it. That's all you have to do is solve the problem in front of you. And there's times that I invested in stuff that I thought, oh, these are going to sell really well, and they don't. And you end up taking a loss on them and just liquidating them. And you just got to keep going. You just got to keep erasing, pushing the mistakes aside and just keep moving forward. Yeah, I don't. There's not one thing in particular that I can think. Oh man, I almost burned my shop down 3 times. So those were all mistakes of some sort. I've had 3 shop fires where I've emptied every extinguisher at my fingertips, and luckily the building survived and I survived.
What was the cause of? What was the common cause? Was there a common cause?
Sparks was one. One, I put a piece of brass in a furnace and I got distracted by a customer, and the brass melted down, and I had zinc fumes that had accumulated about a 3-foot green cloud that you couldn't see through. That was filling the building, and so I had to shut the forge. There was no getting the brass out of the forge because it had already turned to all the elements had separated out, and the zinc was. So I had to evacuate that smoke. I got clearly zinc poisoning. I felt like shit for like 10 days. I had to drink a lot of milk and kind of take it easy. That was a big mistake. I had somebody told me at one point to put a vacuum on my 2x72 grinder, and the way you stop the sparks from going in your dust collector, you put in a spark arrestor box that's got like a little labyrinth in it. Well, the fucking metal dust just collects on the first wall of the labyrinth and builds up until you got steel wool inside there. And then one spark that's lively enough just sets that thing off. I walked into the back room. I heard the smoke alarm go off, and there were 4-foot flames all along the wall that luckily I was able to put out. The building didn't go down. I've done lots of stupid shit.
I think there's some lessons in that one. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
and
Mert, Mert had a similar incident, didn't you, Mert, with the vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, I was making a crucible steel, and I was using my shop vac as the air source, and all of a sudden it starts sounding funny, and I can see like my shop vac dripping.
Yeah,
it melted.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That happened.
What do you do with your steel that you're making?
So you're actually making steel at the moment?
Yeah, we're making steel in a crucible. So I have an induction heater, and we start with pure iron, electrolytic iron. That's like 6/9 pure. And then I use a triple beam scale and a digital scale to measure out the elements. Because, as we were talking about the chemistry of steel, I want to control the chemistry down to like 2 digits beyond the decimal point. And then see how that stuff performs. So I'm trying, like a chef, I'm trying to grow my own vegetables. I'm trying to feed the pigs so that I can control the taste of the meat. That's my goal. I want to start from the beginning. The other thing is, I love the experience of being that close to the craft. I've bought steel. I've done analysis on the industrial steel, and I've seen the sort of variations that I talked about a few minutes ago. So having the capability to make steel in the shop from scratch, I feel like I can control all of it. And I'm also responsible for all of it from the get-go, from the jump. So as long as I know my elements are pure, the rest is on me. How it comes together, how it's heat treated, blah, blah, blah. So Bill's question was, what are we doing? Well, I mean, we're making knives. I make the steel and then we combine it. And every project that we do, there's something to be learned. I mean, maybe it's because I'm kind of a slow learner, or maybe because there's so much to be learned, or maybe it's both of it. But we just feel like we keep learning so much about this material, and it's rich stuff. It's kind of weird. We've been making steel for a long time. We've been making these tools for a long, long time, and there's still more stuff to learn. So in a sense, it's super exciting. And
brilliant. Yeah, Cole here at Gamaco is very, very keen on this, and he's actually preparing a little kit for people with graphite and iron powder and everything all ready to go, so you can smelt your own steel. I don't know how it'll go, but he's having fun, so we'll just let him do it.
Yeah.
Could go with or it could go with 4-foot flames in people's workshops.
Whatever, it's all good to me.
Yeah, that's it.
We've been using up a lot of your time, and we're coming on to the 2 hours. So probably appropriate to.
Let's give the last question to Ian Anderson, who is from the US. I think he was in Colorado. He's listening, so we'll give him a chance to have a shot at the title there. What's your favorite tool or jig that you made for your process in making knives? Are we hitting you with the hard ones?
How about you send us a picture of it? Send Mert a picture of something as you think about that over the next couple of days, and we'll put it up on our Facebook page.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good.
How would that be? Then we can have a when you're working in your shop over the next few days and you find something, flick Mert a picture and we'll share it on Instagram, and that's a great way to finish up. People can duck over to our social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Knife Making Down Under, where you can watch live broadcasts and participate. You'll find us on Instagram, and where else are we, guys? T-shirts. If you want T-shirts, we've got awesome T-shirts as well. We should figure out a way to get them to our special guests.
Yeah, we'll get a T-shirt over to you at some stage, Bob.
Yeah, one way or another, we'll figure that out. It says tools that make tools. That's us. See?
Sounds great. Thanks for indulging me. I appreciate you guys for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks for your time,
welcome,
Bob.
mate. No worries.
Well,
I'm pretty
just
sure
hang about when I press end. We'll just have a quick chat after. All right?
Yeah.
So,
all right.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.